Beneath the bustling streets of Los Angeles, where millions walk above without a second thought, lies a network of tunnels and abandoned tracks. Some carry trains, some lie forgotten, but many carry something else. Tonight, we descend into the most haunted subway tunnels in Los Angeles, where shadows lurk in the darkness. Ghostly footsteps echo through abandoned corridors, and the screams of the past still reverberate beneath the city. Where shadows lurk in the darkness, ghostly footsteps echo through abandoned corridors, and the screams of the past still reverberate beneath the city. Ghostly footsteps echo through abandoned corridors, and the screams of the past still reverberate beneath the city. And the screams of the past still reverberate beneath the city. From phantom commuters to spectral maintenance workers, the underground holds secrets that even daylight cannot erase. The Red Line Tunnel at Hollywood Station is a vital artery beneath the bustling streets of Los Angeles, carrying thousands of commuters daily through its dimly lit corridors and echoing platforms. Its concrete walls and fluorescent lighting create a sense of utilitarian efficiency, yet beneath this modern veneer lies an unsettling reputation. Passengers and transit workers alike have reported strange experiences. A sudden cold presence sweeping through the tunnel, lights flickering without explanation, and ghostly figures glimpsed in the shadows. These accounts suggest that the tunnel is more than a passageway. It is a conduit for lingering energy, a place where the residual presence of the past seems to persist in subtle, haunting ways. Commuters often first notice the sensations while waiting for a train. The temperature in certain stretches of the tunnel can drop sharply without reason, chilling the air and sending shivers down the spine. One late-night passenger described standing on the platform when a sudden wave of cold enveloped her, as if an unseen presence had passed just behind her. Though she looked around, no one else was nearby. Many have reported similar experiences, noting that the cold seems to linger for several steps before dissipating, leaving an uncanny awareness that the space is not entirely empty. Flickering lights are another hallmark of the Red Line Tunnel's strange activity. Fluorescent bulbs along the tunnel walls and above the platform sometimes pulse or dim in irregular patterns, revealing brief glimpses of forms in the shadows. A transit worker recalled walking a maintenance corridor when the lights suddenly flickered, momentarily illuminating a figure standing just beyond the railing. When the lights returned to their normal glow, the figure was gone. Commuters often report seeing shapes in the tunnel's darkness, only to have them vanish when fully observed, as though the tunnel itself is playing with perception, offering glimpses of something just out of reach. Passengers have described human-shaped silhouettes moving along the platform, gliding between columns, or lingering near the far end of the tracks. One man recounted feeling watched as he descended the stairs, glimpsing a dark form that seemed to mirror his movements, for several seconds before disappearing into the tunnel's depths. Security cameras, however, rarely capture any evidence, leaving witnesses with a lingering sense of unease. The figures often appear at the edge of vision, fleeting and indistinct, yet their presence is undeniable. The tunnel's echoing acoustics enhance the sense of the supernatural. Sounds carry unnaturally, footsteps amplified or echoed in odd ways, and distant bangs or drips of water can seem unnervingly deliberate. Some commuters report hearing whispers, indistinct but urgent, drifting through the empty tunnel when no one else is present. Others have heard muffled footsteps behind them, perfectly synchronized with their own pace, only for the sounds to vanish when they turn around. These auditory anomalies contribute to the impression that the tunnel is alive, reacting to the presence of those who traverse it. Even the platform itself seems to carry residual energy. Many have noticed fleeting shapes at the far end, standing still and watching, or shadows that stretch unnaturally along the walls. A late-night train operator described the sensation of being followed by a figure in the darkness, glimpsed only in the corner of his vision. The figure never moved toward him, yet he felt its presence with a weight that was almost tangible. Commuters describe similar experiences. The impression of unseen eyes tracking their movements, an awareness of being the presence of something not entirely human. Despite the eerie atmosphere, witnesses rarely report outright fear. Many describe the presence as unsettling but strangely solemn, as if the tunnel holds memories rather than malevolence. The flickering lights, cold draft, and shadowy figures seem tied to lingering energy rather than threat, remnants of long-forgotten journeys, echoes of past passengers, or the imprint of history upon the underground space. Security and maintenance staff often report a quiet respect in these moments, acknowledging the strange occurrences while carrying on their duties, aware that the tunnel harbors its own hidden life. At night, when the station is nearly empty and the trains run at wider intervals, the Red Line tunnel reveals its most mysterious qualities. Cold currents sweep along the platform, lights flicker without cause, and shadowy forms linger just beyond reach. Every step, every echo, every brief movement in the darkness seems purposeful, as if the tunnel itself is replaying fragments of its past for those willing to notice. For those attuned to the subtle signs, the Red Line tunnel becomes more than a utilitarian passage. It transforms into a space where the history of human movement, energy, and presence is preserved, lingering in the shadows, the cold, and the flickering lights. Lingering in the shadows, the cold, and the flickering lights. The Red Line tunnel at Hollywood Station is a place where ordinary routines intersect with the inexplicable. Every shadow, every whisper, and every chill carries the weight of countless travelers who have passed through, leaving traces of their existence behind. Commuters who venture through its underground corridors are not merely moving from one station to another. They are passing through a space alive with history, memory, and spectral presence. Ordinary routines intersect with the inexplicable. In the dim light, amidst the echo of footsteps and the flicker of lamps, becomes a living reminder that some places retain the echoes of those who came before, silently watching, waiting, and moving. Just out of sight, the Blue Line tunnel beneath downtown Los Angeles is a hidden artery of the city, carrying the hum of trains and the flow of commuters along its subterranean path. By day, it is a place of routine, the steady clatter of wheels, the distant rumble of engines, and the chatter of passengers. Yet beneath this modern rhythm lies a darker, quieter side that has long intrigued transit workers, maintenance crews, and late-night passengers. Report of apparitions in old maintenance uniforms, echoing footsteps when no trains run, and unexplained shadows stretching across the tunnel walls suggest that the Blue Line tunnel is more than concrete and stela. It is a space haunted by traces of the past, a corridor where history lingers in ways both eerie and inexplicable. Sightings of apparitions in vintage maintenance uniforms are among the most reported phenomena. Workers on late-night shifts or early morning inspections have described seeing figures dressed in the style of employees from decades past, often moving deliberately along service walkways or crouching near electrical panels. Sightings of apparitions in vintage maintenance uniforms are among the most reported phenomena. Workers on late-night shifts or early morning inspections have described seeing figures dressed in the style of employees from decades past, often moving deliberately along service walkways or crouching near electrical panels. One technician recounted walking along the tunnel to inspect signal lights when he glimpsed a man in an old orange and blue uniform bent over a valve. When he called out, the figure stood and slowly turned, revealing a face indistinct and shadowed, before disappearing entirely. Others have reported seeing multiple figures performing tasks as though on duty, checking equipment, or walking the tracks, only to vanish moments later. These ghostly employees are rarely threatening. Rather, they appear focused, almost absorbed in completing work that no longer exists. Echoing footsteps are another hallmark of the tunnel's mysterious energy. During periods when no trains run, the concrete corridors carry sound with an unnatural resonance. Workers and visitors have reported hearing footsteps pacing in rhythm, following them along platforms or maintenance paths, and then stopping when approached. One late-night inspector described walking a section of the tunnel and hearing a distinct series of steps behind him. When he turned to look, no one was there, yet the footsteps continued, fading gradually into the distance. The repetition and cadence of these echoes often mirror historical routines, as if the tunnel itself is replaying the passage of those who once worked tirelessly to maintain its systems. Unexplained shadows add another layer of unease to the Blue Line tunnel. On nights when the tunnel is empty and the lights flicker intermittently, Walls seem to shift with movement that cannot be explained by passing trains or equipment. Shapes stretch along the concrete, sometimes resembling human silhouettes, other times appearing as indistinct forms drifting just beyond the edge of vision. Security staff have described moments when a shadow seems to detach from the wall entirely, moving along the track or disappearing into a dark recess. Commuters passing through on late-night service runs have reported the sensation of being watched, a fleeting glimpse of something standing silently near a maintenance hatch or leaning against a wall. The tunnel-esque architecture and acoustics amplify these eerie phenomena. Its narrow corridors, vaulted ceilings, and reflective surfaces allow sound to travel and light to distort in unusual ways. A single flickering bulb can cast long, shifting shadows that seem to move independently in every small sounder. Dripping water, clanging metal, distant fansa, can carry in ways that mimic human footsteps or voices. Witnesses often report a heightened awareness in these moments, feeling presences just beyond the edge of perception, or hearing the faint echo of commands, conversations, or footfalls from workers long gone. The effect is subtle yet pervasive, creating a sense that the tunnel itself holds memories, preserving fragments of history within its walls. Even the tracks themselves seem to harbor residual energy. Some technicians report seeing shapes crossing from one side of the tunnel to the other, moving with precision as if performing tasks repeated for decades. Rail alignment checks, equipment inspections, and signal maintenance all seem to echo faintly in the patterns of unseen figures. Sometimes the sounds of a tool being dropped, a wrench clanging, or a door opening and closing are heard, only to find that no equipment has been disturbed. The tunnel, in these instances, seems alive with a rhythm of work that continues in spectral form, a tribute to the dedication of past employees. Despite the unsettling nature of these experiences, most witnesses describe a sense of quiet respect rather than fear. The apparitions in old maintenance uniforms, the echoing footsteps, and the shifting shadows are rarely perceived as malevolent. Instead, they appear devoted to preserving a presence, repeating routines, and maintaining a connection to the space they once cared for. Workers and visitors often sense that they are sharing the tunnel with remnants of history, glimpsing moments from a time when the Blue Line was newer, busier, and alive with human diligence. A sense of quiet respect rather than fear. At night, when downtown Los Angeles is still, and no trains disturb the silence, the Blue Line tunnel reveals its most mysterious qualities. Apparitions in vintage uniforms move with purpose. Footsteps echo along empty corridors, and shadows stretch and twist along the walls, sometimes fleeting, sometimes lingering. Every sound, every flicker, every movement seems deliberate, as if the tunnel is replaying fragments of its past for those who pass through. For those attuned to its energy, the Blue Line tunnel becomes more than a transit retia, it becomes a living archive. A subterranean space where the memories of workers, the history of maintenance, and the echoes of human presence continue to resonate. The history of maintenance and the echoes of human presence continue to resonate long after the final train has passed. The Blue Line tunnel reminds all who traverse it that even the most utilitarian spaces can carry profound stories. Each shadow, every step, and every flicker of light is a whisper from the past, a trace of those who labored, watched, and moved through its darkened corridors. In the quiet hours, beneath the heartbeat of Los Angeles, the tunnel becomes a place where history, memory, and presence converge, and where the spirits of the past continue to observe, maintain, and inhabit the space in ways both subtle and unmistakable. The Green Line tunnel beneath Willowbrook Station is a dark and often overlooked passageway, stretching beneath the city streets and carrying the constant hum of the metro above. By day, it functions as a vital conduit for commuters, technicians, and trains, a utilitarian artery of motion and routine. Yet after hours, when the bustle fades and the fluorescent lights flicker in quiet corners, the tunnel takes on a different character, one that has prompted workers, technicians, and occasional late-night passengers to speak of strange phenomena. Voices calling out names, lights swinging without wind, and ghostly figures peering from shadowed alcoves suggest that the Green Line tunnel is not merely concrete and steel, but a space haunted by lingering echoes of the past. Maintenance crews, inspecting tracks late at night or performing routine checks, often hear names called from places that should be empty. Sometimes these names are familiar or belonging to colleagues or historical staff, and other times they are unfamiliar, seemingly drawn from a past long forgotten. One technician recalled walking along a service corridor when he distinctly heard a voice call out, "Hey, Miguel, over here." A stopped, looked down the tunnel, and saw nothing. When he called back, no response came. Yet the voice had felt intimate, almost personal, as if someone invisible were reaching across time to be noticed. These auditory phenomena are subtle and fleeting, often fading the moment the witness searches for the source, leaving a sense of awe mingled with unease. Lights are another source of unsettling experiences. Suspended bulbs and fluorescent strips swing gently even when there is no breeze or mechanical vibration. Crew members frequently report noticing lights that begin to oscillate slowly, illuminating portions of the tunnel in irregular bursts and casting long, shifting shadows along the walls. One night, a maintenance worker observed a set of lights above a darkened alcove begin to sway, revealing the faint outline of a figure crouched within. Before he could approach, the light settled, and the figure vanished as if it had never been there. The interplay of shadow and illumination seems almost purposeful, highlighting glimpses of movement in spaces where no one should be present. Ghostly figures are often glimpsed in these same darkened alcoves and service passages. Workers walking the length of the tunnel report seeing human-like silhouettes watching from recesses, sometimes leaning lightly against walls, sometimes crouching near access panels. These figures are rarely threatening. They do not approach, speak, or attempt contacta, but their presence is undeniable. One technician described rounding a corner and noticing a figure in a faded uniform, standing silently in the shadows before slowly fading back into darkness. Others have reported glimpsing forms drifting along the edges of maintenance platforms or disappearing into ventilation shafts, leaving only a lingering impression that the space is not entirely empty. The tunnel's design amplifies these phenomena. Its narrow corridors, reflective concrete surfaces, and low ceilings allow sound and shadow to behave unpredictably, turning minor noises into echoes that appear deliberate and exaggerating movements in the dim light. Every footstep, drip of water, or faint metallic clang can carry unnaturally, sometimes sounding like a second presence following or pacing alongside the witness. Shadows can stretch or twist as light shifts, creating the impression of figures moving independently of any physical source. This combination of acoustics and lighting enhances the feeling of being observed, of sharing the space with presences that exist just beyond clear perception. Even the train tracks themselves seem imbued with residual energy. Crew members report seeing fleeting forms along the rails, crouched or inspecting machinery as if performing tasks from decades past. Tools and panels sometimes appear slightly displaced when workers return, though no one has been present to move them. These subtle anomalies suggest the persistence of activity, an echo of the labor that built and continues to sustain the tunnel. Workers have come to regard these moments with a mixture of respect and caution, recognizing that the space carries traces of the countless individuals who have walked, worked, and maintained it over the years. Despite the unsettling nature of these experiences, witnesses rarely report fear. The voices, swinging lights, and ghostly figures are generally perceived as solemn echoes rather than threats. They convey a sense of history, a quiet reverence for the labor, presence, and passage of those who came before. Technicians and night workers often describe a feeling of connection when these phenomena occur, sensing that they are moving among memories, shadows, and energies preserved by the tunnel itself. After the last train has passed and the station grows silent, the Green Line tunnel at Willowbrook transforms. Voices whisper names, lights swing and illuminate fleeting forms, and ghostly figures peer silently from alcoves along the tracks. Every sound, shadow, and movement seems deliberate, as if the tunnel is replaying fragments of its past for those present. For those sensitive to its subtle cues, the Green Line tunnel becomes more than a transportation corridor, it becomes a living archive, a place where history, memory, and lingering presence converge, and where the spirits of past workers, travelers, and passers-by continue to inhabit the space in quiet, persistent ways. Walking through the tunnel in these quiet hours, one becomes acutely aware that the green line at Willowbrook is not merely infrastructure. Every shadow, every echo, and every flicker of light is a trace of past lives and labor, a reminder that beneath the city's streets, history persists. The tunnel is a living witness, carrying the energy of those who built, maintained, and traversed it, ensuring that even in the absence of trains and people, the Green Line tunnel remains occupied by the echoes of time, quietly observing, moving, and enduring. Quietly observing, moving, and enduring. The Red Line tunnel at Union Station Extension is one of Los Angeles' most heavily trafficked subterranean routes by day. Its long corridors and platforms pulsing with the rhythm of trains and commuters. By night, however, when the flow of passengers diminishes and the roar of the city above fades, the tunnel takes on an eerie stillness that has drawn the attention of transit workers, night inspectors, and late-shift passengers. Report of apparitions of old commuters, phantom train noises, and shadowy forms moving along abandoned platforms suggest that the tunnel is more than just a passageway. It is a space where the echoes of the past persist, lingering in subtle and unsettling ways. Workers and night shift inspectors have described seeing figures dressed in outdated attire from decades past, appearing to wait on platforms as if anticipating a train long gone. One maintenance technician recounted walking a deserted section of the tunnel when he noticed a group of figures standing near an unused platform, their clothing suggesting commuters from the 1940s or 1950s. Passengers passing through late at night have also reported glimpses of fleeting shapes at the far ends of platforms, disappearing when the lights flicker or when attention turns fully toward them. Phantom train noises accompany many of these sightings. Even when no trains are scheduled to run, witnesses have described a low rumble of an approaching train, the distant hiss of brakes, and the rhythmic clatter of wheels on rails. One night, a late-night security guard reported hearing the unmistakable sounds of a train slowing as it approached the platform, followed by the faint murmur of passengers disembarking. When he peered down the tracks, the tunnel appeared completely empty, with no train in sight. These auditory hallucinations are often synchronized with other phenomena, flickering lights, sudden chills, or the movement of shadows along the walls. For many, the sounds feel hauntingly real, as though the tunnel is replaying its past activity for anyone willing to listen. Shadowy forms moving along abandoned platforms are another hallmark of the tunnel's spectral presence. Night shift workers frequently report seeing silhouettes pacing near empty benches, or gliding along the edges of platforms where no train is scheduled to stop. One transit employee described noticing a figure standing by a stairwell, partially illuminated by a flickering overhead light, only to vanish as he approached. These movements are usually slow, deliberate, and almost ritualistic, giving the impression that the forms are repeating habits from a bygone era. They do not interact aggressively with humans. Instead, they appear intent on occupying the space in a way that mirrors the daily routines of commuters long gone. The tunnel-esque architecture enhances these haunting effects. Its long stretches of concrete walls, low ceilings, and narrow walkways create a unique acoustic environment where sound carries in unexpected ways. A single drip of water can echo for yards. Footsteps resonate like multiple people moving, and the faintest vibration of a train above can mimic the approach of a phantom train below. Shadows stretch and distort under dim lighting, giving the appearance of figures where none exist. For those moving to the tunnel at night, the environment amplifies every anomaly, making every sound, flicker, or movement feel deliberate and meaningful. Even unused platforms and service corridors display subtle signs of lingering activity. Bench may appear slightly rearranged. Doors to maintenance areas can creak open or shut on their own. And the faint murmur of voices sometimes drifts through areas that should be silent. These occurrences are not threatening. Rather, they create a sense of continuity, as if the tunnel preserves the patterns, behaviors, and presence of those who once traveled and worked there. Maintenance workers often describe a quiet reverence when these phenomena occur, sensing that they are witnessing the residual energy of countless individuals who shaped the history of the Red Line extension. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, witnesses rarely describe outright fear. The apparitions of old commuters, phantom train noises, and shadowy forms are generally seen as echoes of memory rather than malevolence. They seem to preserve the energy and routine of the tunnel, replaying moments that once filled the space with life and motion. Night shift employees and inspectors often report feeling recognizing the tunnel as a place where the past continues to exist alongside the present. When the city above sleeps and the platforms are deserted, the Red Line tunnel at Union Station Extension awakens in subtle, spectral ways. Apparitions of commuters from decades past glide silently along the edges of platforms. Phantom trains rumble in the distance, and shadows twist along the walls in patterns that mimic human movement. Every creak, every flicker of light, and every echo of footsteps seems deliberate, as though the tunnel itself is replaying its history. For those attuned to its rhythms, the tunnel is not merely a passageway for trains. It is a living record, a space where memory, present, and history continue to interact long after the trains have ceased their movement for the night. The Red Line tunnel at Union Station Extension serves as a reminder that beneath the city streets, spaces retain the energy of those who traveled, worked, and waited within them. Every shadow, sound, and flicker is a trace of past lives, a lingering presence that quietly observes the move alongside the living. In the quiet hours, when the city above is still, the tunnel becomes a corridor of memory and spirit, ensuring that the echoes of old commuters, phantom trains, and shadowy forms continue to haunt its abandoned platforms for anyone patient enough to notice. The Gold Line tunnel beneath Chinatown in Los Angeles is a vital artery connecting the city's bustling neighborhoods, carrying commuters swiftly through its dimly lit corridors and underground stations. By day, the tunnel is alive with a hum of trains, the chatter of passengers, and the bright fluorescent lights reflecting off concrete walls. But after the last train departs and the stations fall silent, the tunnel transforms into something far more mysterious. Witnesses describe ghostly figures walking through walls, cold drafts sweeping across sealed areas, and faint whispers echoing in empty stations. These phenomena suggest that the Gold Line tunnel is not merely a transportation ratia. It is a space where the past continues to linger, leaving traces of those who once moved through it. The first and most startling phenomenon reported by workers and late-night commuters is the appearance of ghostly figures. These apparitions are often described as human silhouettes moving with a sense of purpose, walking along platforms or through hallways, only to pass through walls as though solid structures cannot impede them. One maintenance worker recalled inspecting an unused section of the tunnel when he noticed a figure walking toward him. The silhouette paused briefly, seemingly aware of his presence, and then vanished entirely into the concrete wall beside the platform. Others have described seeing multiple figures drifting along service corridors, appearing and disappearing in a rhythm that suggests a haunting continuity of activity. These ghostly commuters are rarely threatening, but their presence evokes an undeniable feeling that the tunnel is more than an empty passage. It is inhabited by echoes of the past. Cold drafts are another frequent occurrence. Areas that are completely sealed or inaccessible often carry an inexplicable chill, sending shivers along the spine of anyone passing through. Workers report sudden drops in temperature near utility doors or abandoned maintenance alcoves, even when ventilation systems are inactive. One security guard described patrolling a side corridor late at night when a rush of icy air swept across his face, though every door and vent in the area was closed. The chill seemed to follow him briefly, as if something unseen was moving alongside him. These cold spots often accompany sightings of ghostly figures or flickering lights, further enhancing the impression that the tunnel is alive with unseen activity. Faint whispers add another layer of mystery to the Gold Line tunnel. Workers and visitors alike report hearing murmurs drifting through empty stations, often too subtle to identify words, but undeniably human in tone. Some describe hearing their names called softly, while others hear fragments of conversations or announcements long since outdated. A late-night commuter once remarked hearing a soft, urgent whisper as she walked down a deserted platform. These whispers are rarely audible in loud or busy conditions. They manifest most clearly during quiet, solitary hours, amplifying the sense that the tunnel preserves the presence of those who once traveled its passages. The stations themselves often intensify these experiences. Their long concrete corridors, high ceilings, and reflective surfaces allow sound and shadow to carry in unpredictable ways. A single flickering light can cast long shadows that seem to move independently, and the echoes of footsteps can resonate as though multiple people are present. Even small noises, a dripping pipe, a sliding panel, a distant fana can mimic the movement of figures along platforms or the passage of ghostly commuters. For those navigating the tunnels at night, the interplay of light, shadow, and sound creates a surreal environment where the familiar becomes subtly uncanny. The tracks and service corridors also hold evidence of lingering presence. Workers report seeing shapes moving along rails, inspecting equipment, or pausing near maintenance doors before vanishing. Tools or panels left untouched during the day sometimes appear shifted or slightly displaced after a night patrol, suggesting subtle interactions from unseen hands. The tunnel seems to preserve the energy of those who maintained and traveled it, replaying fragments of daily life in ghostly repetition. Despite the eerie nature of these experiences, witnesses rarely report fear. The ghostly figures, cold drafts, and whispers are perceived as echoes of history rather than threats. They convey a sense of continuity, a connection to the past, and a reminder that the tunnel has been a place of movement, labor, and life long before modern commuters arrived. Maintenance crews often describe feeling a quiet respect when these phenomena occur, sensing that the tunnel is not empty, but inhabited by lingering presence and memory. When the city above Chinatown falls silent and the stations are deserted, the gold-lined tunnel awakens in subtle, spectral ways. Ghostly figures glide through walls, cold drafts sweep across sealed areas, and faint whispers echo across empty platforms. Every flicker of light, every shadow, and every unexplained sound seems deliberate, as though the tunnel itself is replaying fragments of its history. For those attuned to its rhythms, the gold-lined tunnel is more than a passageway for trains. It is a living archive, a place where memory, energy, and presence converge, and where the echoes of past travelers, workers, and commuters continue to inhabit the space long after the last train has passed. The gold-lined tunnel beneath Chinatown stands as a reminder that even the most utilitarian spaces can hold the weight of history. Every shadow, every whisper, every flicker of light is a trace of the lives and energy that have passed through, leaving an imprint on the concrete and steel. In the quiet hours, when the stations are empty and the trains are silent, the tunnel becomes a conduit for memory, a hidden corridor where the past lingers, watching, moving, and whispering to anyone perceptive enough to notice. The Blue Line Tunnel along the Long Beach extension is one of Los Angeles' most heavily traveled underground corridors, carrying commuters between the city and its southern neighborhoods. By day, it hums with familiar rhythm of trains, the chatter of passengers, and the occasional squeal of wheels against rails. Yet beneath this utilitarian energy lies a quieter, far more mysterious presence. Commuters and workers report shadowy figures appearing in the tunnels, lights flickering along empty tracks, and phantom footsteps echoing behind them, suggesting that the Blue Line Tunnel is more than a simple transit route. It is a space alive with the echoes of those who have passed through it over decades. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently described phenomena. Workers on late-night shifts often see human-like silhouettes moving along service corridors or near the tracks, only to vanish when approached. One maintenance technician recounted walking a section of the tunnel to inspect signal panels when he noticed a figure pacing along the far wall. The shadow seemed aware of him, pausing momentarily before dissolving into the darkness. Other commuters have described glimpsing figures standing on empty platforms, leaning against the walls, or moving through alcoves that should be inaccessible. These apparitions rarely approach or interact directly. Yet their presence creates profound awareness that the tunnels are not entirely empty. Flickering lights are another common feature of the Tunnel S haunting. Fluorescent bulbs along the tracks and in maintenance areas occasionally dim, pulse, or swing, revealing fleeting images of forms or movement in the shadows. One security guard recalled checking an unoccupied platform late at night when the overhead lights flickered, briefly illuminating a dark figure crouched at the edge of the tracks. When the light stabilized, the figure was gone. These anomalies often coincide with other phenomena, such as the sensation of being followed or the distant sound of footsteps echoing along the tunnels, creating an atmosphere of unease and intrigue. Phantom footsteps are one of the most unsettling aspects of the Blue Line Tunnel. Workers, inspectors, and late night commuters have reported hearing footsteps behind them when no one else is present, often synchronized with their own pace. When he turned to confront the presence, the tunnel remained empty. These auditory experiences, combined with the visual shadows and flickering lights, create a sense that the tunnel is replaying the presence of travelers long gone, preserving fragments of the past in real time. A single dripping pipe can echo for yards, making it sound like footsteps approaching from a distance. Shadows cast by a flickering bulb can stretch across the walls, momentarily resembling human forms. The tunnel's architecture enhances these eerie sensations. Long concrete corridors, low ceilings, and reflective surfaces amplify sounds, distort light, and create visual illusions. A single dripping pipe can echo for yards, making it sound like footsteps approaching from a distance. Shadows cast by a flickering bulb can stretch across the walls, momentarily resembling human forms. Even ordinary sounds such as sliding panels, distant fans, or the vibration of a train above you can contribute to the impression that something unseen is present. Those traversing the tunnels after hours often describe a heightened awareness, feeling that the space itself is attentive, observing, and subtly interacting with them. Abandoned maintenance areas and service corridors often bear the strongest signs of lingering presence. Tools left in place sometimes appear slightly moved the next day. Panels and doors may creak or swing without explanation, and faint traces of movement are occasionally observed in areas inaccessible to the living. Workers report the sensation of being followed or watched, even when they're alone, and some describe a quiet sense of respect or acknowledgement when these experiences occur. The tunnels seem to preserve not just a physical layout, but also the memories, routines, and presence of those who maintained and traveled them over the years. Despite the eerie atmosphere, most witnesses describe these encounters as more unnerving than threatening. Shadowy figures, flickering lights, and echoing footsteps are generally interpreted as echoes of history, not malevolent forces. Commuters and workers often report feeling a sense of kinship with these presences, a sense that they are walking alongside the ghosts of the past, sharing space with those who once navigated the tunnels with purpose and routine. The tunnel seems to replay its history quietly, inviting observers to witness its memory. At night, when the last trains have departed and the stations fall silent, the Blue Line Tunnel along the Long Beach extension reveals its most mysterious qualities. Shadowy figures drift through the darkness, flickering lights illuminate fleeting forms, and phantom footsteps echo along empty tracks. Every creak, every shift of light, every distant sound feels deliberate, as if the tunnel itself is performing a subtle reenactment of its past. For those attuned to its rhythms, the tunnel is more than an underground transit routine. It is a living archive, a place where memory, presence, and history converge. The Blue Line Tunnel at Long Beach Extension stands as a reminder that even the most ordinary spaces can carry the weight of time and human activity. Every shadow, every flicker, and every echo is a trace of those who have passed through, a lingering energy that continues to inhabit the space. In the quiet hours, when the tunnels are empty and the trains are silent, the corridor becomes a conduit for memory and presence, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of past commuters and workers for anyone perceptive enough to notice. The Blue Line Tunnel along the Long Beach Extension is one of Los Angeles' most heavily traveled underground corridors, carrying commuters between the city and its southern neighborhoods. By day, It hums with familiar rhythm of trains, the chatter of passengers, and the occasional squeal of wheels against rails. Yet beneath this utilitarian energy lies a quieter, far more mysterious presence. Commuters and workers report shadowy figures appearing in the tunnels, lights flickering along empty tracks, and phantom footsteps echoing behind them, suggesting that the Blue Line Tunnel is more than a simple transit route. It is a space alive with the echoes of those who have passed through it over decades. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently described phenomena. Workers on late-night shifts often see human-like silhouettes moving along service corridors or near the tracks, only to vanish when approached. One maintenance technician recounted walking a section of the tunnel to inspect signal panels when he noticed a figure pacing along the far wall. The shadow seemed aware of him, pausing momentarily before dissolving into the darkness. Other commuters have described glimpsing figures standing on empty platforms, leaning against the walls, or moving through alcoves that should be inaccessible. These apparitions rarely approach or interact directly, yet their presence creates a profound awareness that the tunnels are not entirely empty. Flickering lights are another common feature of the tunnel-esque haunting. Fluorescent bulbs along the tracks and in maintenance areas occasionally dim, pulse, or swing, revealing fleeting images of forms or movement in the shadows. One security guard recalled checking an unoccupied platform late at night when the overhead lights flickered, briefly illuminating a dark figure crouched at the edge of the tracks. When the light stabilized, the figure was gone. These anomalies often coincide with other phenomena, such as the sensation of being followed or the distant sound of footsteps echoing along the tunnels, creating an atmosphere of unease and intrigue. Phantom footsteps are one of the most unsettling aspects of the Blue Line Tunnel. Workers, inspectors, and late-night commuters have reported hearing footsteps behind them when no one else is present, often synchronized with their own pace. One night, a train operator walking an empty section of the tunnel heard the echo of someone following each step, sometimes stopping when he stopped, resuming when he moved forward. When he turned to confront the presence, the tunnel remained empty. These auditory experiences, combined with the visual shadows, create a sense that the tunnel is replaying the presence of travelers long gone, preserving fragments of the past in real time. The tunnel's architecture enhances these eerie sensations. Long concrete corridors, low ceilings, and reflective surfaces amplify sounds, distort light, and create visual illusions. A single dripping pipe can echo for yards, making it sound like footsteps approaching from a distance. Shadows cast by a flickering bulb can stretch across the walls, momentarily resembling human forms. Even ordinary sounds of sliding panels, distant fans, or the vibration of a train above you can contribute to the impression that something unseen is present. Those traversing the tunnels after hours often describe a heightened awareness, feeling that the space itself is attentive, observing, and subtly interacting with them. Abandoned maintenance areas and service corridors often bear the strongest signs of lingering presence. Tools left in place sometimes appear slightly moved the next day. Panels and doors may creak or swing without explanation, and faint traces of movement are occasionally observed in areas inaccessible to the living. Workers report the sensation of being followed or watched, even when they are alone, and some describe a quiet sense of respect or acknowledgement when these experiences occur. The tunnels seem to preserve not just a physical layout, but also the memories, routines, and presence of those who maintained and traveled them over the years. Despite the eerie atmosphere, most witnesses describe these encounters as more unnerving than threatening. Shadowy figures, flickering lights, and echoing footsteps are generally interpreted as echoes of history, not malevolent forces. Commuters and workers often report feeling a strange kinship with these presences, a sense that they are walking alongside the ghosts of the past, sharing space with those who once navigated the tunnels with purpose and routine. The tunnel seems to replay its history quietly, inviting observers to witness its memory. At night, when the last trains have departed and the stations fall silent, the Blue Line Tunnel along the Long Beach extension reveals its most mysterious qualities. Shadowy figures drift through the darkness. Flickering lights illuminate fleeting forms. and phantom footsteps echo along empty tracks. Every creak, every shift of light, every distant sound feels deliberate, as if the tunnel itself is performing a subtle reenactment of its past. For those attuned to its rhythms, the tunnel is more than an underground transit routine. It is a living archive, a place where memory, presence, and history converge. The Blue Line Tunnel at Long Beach Extension stands as a reminder that even the most ordinary spaces can carry the weight of time and human activity. Every shadow, every flicker, and every echo is a trace of those who have passed through, a lingering energy that continues to inhabit the space. In the quiet hours, when the tunnels are empty and the trains are silent, the corridor becomes a conduit for memory and presence. Silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of past commuters and workers for anyone perceptive enough to notice. The Expo Line tunnel beneath downtown Culver City is a key passage in Los Angeles' transit system, its concrete walls and steel rails carrying the daily flow of trains and commuters. By day, the tunnel hums with routine, the rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks, the soft murmur of passengers, and the occasional announcement over the intercom. The rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks, the soft murmur of passengers, and the occasional announcement over the intercom. But after hours, when the trains stop running and the station empties, the tunnel reveals a far stranger character. Reports of ghostly maintenance workers checking tracks, vehicles shifting slightly without explanation, and faint voices warning of unseen danger suggest that the Expo Line tunnel is not merely a passageway. It is a space where the past, memory, and residual energy converge in ways both eerie and compelling. Witnesses often first notice the presence of ghostly maintenance workers. Late-night inspectors, technicians, and security staff report seeing figures dressed in uniforms reminiscent of past eras, walking along tracks or crouched near switches as they're performing routine checks. One maintenance worker described walking through a section of the tunnel to inspect lighting when he saw a shadowy figure kneeling by a control panel. The figure appeared focused on its work, entirely oblivious to his presence, and vanished the moment he attempted to approach. Others have observed multiple figures pacing the tracks or examining machinery with meticulous care. These apparitions seem dedicated to their tasks, performing the routines of maintenance, long after the workday has ended, as if the tunnel preserves the energy of those who once kept operational. Unexplained vehicle movement adds another layer of mystery. Maintenance carts, trolleys, or equipment occasionally shift or rock slightly when no one is nearby. One security guard recounted checking a parked service cart and noticing that it had moved several feet along the track, despite no employees having been present. Such occurrences are often subtly a small shift in alignment or a gentle nudge, but they contribute to the sense that the tunnel is a living space, attentive and responsive to its visitors. These movements are rarely aggressive or threatening, yet they reinforce the feeling that unseen presences are actively inhabiting the tunnel, interacting with the physical environment in ways that defy explanation. Voices warning of danger are among the most unsettling experiences reported. Late-night workers have described hearing whispered alerts, indistinct but urgent, drifting through corridors or long empty platforms. One technician recalled hearing a faint voice calling his name, followed by a clear warning to watch the track ahead. When he glanced down the tunnel, no one was visible, yet the sense of imminent presence was undeniable. Others report hearing soft murmurs that seem to indicate caution, guiding them away from hazards or alerting them to unseen activity. These auditory phenomena, combined with the ghostly figures and unexplained movements, create a haunting impression that the tunnel itself is aware, protective, and vigilant. The tunnel-esque architecture amplifies these eerie experiences. Its long concrete walls, low ceilings, and narrow walkways create acoustics that make sound carry in unexpected ways, turning ordinary noises into echoes that mimic footsteps or conversations. A dripping pipe, a sliding panel, or the distant vibration of a train can transform into something uncanny when experienced alone in the quiet of the tunnel. Workers and late-night visitors often describe a heightened sense of awareness in these moments, feeling observed or guided by forces that are invisible yet undeniably present. Even the tracks themselves seem to hold residual energy. Workers report seeing fleeting shapes walking along the rails, inspecting equipment, or pausing near switches. Tools left in place sometimes appear slightly disturbed the following day, and panels or doors may creak open or close with no explanation. These subtle signs suggest that the tunnel preserves not only its physical infrastructure, but also the activities, routines, and presence of those who maintain it over decades. The energy is persistent, almost deliberate, as if the tunnel remembers and repeats its past. Despite the unsettling nature of these occurrences, witnesses rarely report outright fear. Ghostly figures, moving equipment, and warning voices are generally perceived as echoes of history, not malevolent threats. Many workers describe feeling a sense of respect or even kinship with these phenomena, recognizing that the tunnel is a repository of labor, diligence, and presence. The apparitions, whispers, and subtle movements seem intended to maintain awareness, to guide, and to remind those passing through that the space is alive in ways that extend beyond the physical. When the last train has departed and the stations fall silent, the Expo Line tunnel in downtown Culver City becomes a realm of subtle activity and lingering memory. Ghostly maintenance workers walk the tracks. Equipment shifts without explanation, and voices warn of unseen dangers. For anyone willing to notice, the Expo Line tunnel is more than a transportation conduita. It is a living archive, a space where memory, history, and presence continue to interact. Long after the trains have stopped running, the Blue Line tunnel at Long Beach Extension stands as a reminder that even the most functional spaces can hold echoes of time and human activity. Every shadow, every flicker, every whispered warning is a trace of those who once walked its corridors, maintained its machinery, and traversed its platforms. In the quiet hours, when trains are silent and platforms empty, the Expo Line tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of those who came before. The Red Line tunnel in North Hollywood is a bustling artery by day, carrying commuters to the underground corridors of Los Angeles transit system. The hum of trains, the chatter of passengers, and the steady rhythm of footsteps make the tunnel feel alive with motion and purpose. Yet after the last train departs and the stations fall silent, the atmosphere changes. Reports from late-night workers, transit employees, and occasional passengers tell of a different reality beneath the city streets. Phantom commuters waiting on platforms, sudden cold spots in empty tunnels, and lights flickering inexplicably despite functioning electrical systems. These strange occurrences suggest that the Red Line tunnel is more than a mere passageway. It is a place where traces of the past linger, interacting with those who traverse it in subtle and unnerving ways. Phantom commuters are the most frequently reported phenomenon. Witnesses describe human figures appearing on deserted platforms, often dressed in outdated clothing or moving in a way that seems slightly out of step with the present. One night, a security guard recounted seeing a group of figures waiting near the edge of an empty platform, glancing toward the tunnel as if anticipating an approaching train. When he approached, the figures remained perfectly still for a moment, before slowly vanishing into the darkness. Others have described seeing solitary individuals standing in corners or pacing along the tracks, only to disappear when viewed directly. These apparitions create a surreal sense of presence, as if the tunnel is replaying the daily routines of commuters from another time, frozen in echoes of movement that refuse to fade. Cold spots are another hallmark of the tunnel's haunting. Certain stretches of the Red Line are reported to drop sharply in temperature without explanation, often leaving late-night workers and inspectors shivering despite warm ambient conditions. These sudden chills are sometimes accompanied by the sense that something unseen is nearby, a presence just beyond the edge of perception. One maintenance worker described walking through a side corridor when a wave of cold air swept past, as if someone had brushed past him, even though the area was sealed and empty. The effect is fleeting yet disorienting, leaving witnesses with a lingering awareness that the tunnel is not entirely uninhabited. Flickering lights add an additional layer of eeriness. Bulbs along the platforms and maintenance corridors occasionally pulse, dim, or swing without any electrical fault or airflow to account for the movement. These light anomalies often coincide with sightings of phantom commuters or the sudden appearance of cold spots. One technician recalled inspecting a section of track when the overhead lights flickered rhythmically, briefly revealing a figure standing in a darkened alcove. When the light returned to normal, the figure had disappeared, leaving only the echo of footsteps that had never been heard before. The combination of shadow, light, and sound creates an environment where reality and apparition blur, heightening the sense that the tunnel is a space alive with unseen forces. Long, narrow corridors, low ceilings, and reflective concrete surfaces carry sound and light in unusual ways, causing ordinary noises to echo like footsteps and shadows to stretch or distort into human forms. A dripping pipe, a sliding panel, or the vibration from trains running on parallel tracks can mimic the presence of another person, making it difficult to distinguish between the living and the spectral. Late-night workers and commuters often describe a heightened awareness in these moments, a sensation that the tunnel itself is observing them, interacting with their movement, and preserving traces of those who have passed through before. Even the tracks and maintenance corridors appear to preserve residual energy. Workers occasionally notice tools slightly displaced or doors left ajar after checking sections that have been secured. Shadows flicker in the corner of vision, and faint echoes of conversations or footsteps sometimes resonate in areas where no one should be present. These subtle signs suggest that the tunnel is a space where the past persists, replaying fragments of activity from long-forgotten commuters and maintenance staff. The energy is not aggressive or threatening. It is quiet, deliberate, and persistent, as if the tunnel remembers the people who traversed it and continues to honor their presence in spectral form. Despite the unnerving nature of these experiences, witnesses rarely report fear. Phantom commuters, cold spots, and flickering lights are generally perceived as echoes of history rather than malicious entities. Many late-night workers and security staff describe a sense of kinship with these phenomena, understanding that the tunnel is replaying the routines, habits, and movements of those who came before. The apparitions and anomalies create a unique awareness of time and presence, connecting the present moment to decades of human activity that the tunnel has silently witnessed. When the city above North Hollywood sleeps and the Red Line tunnel stands empty, its mysterious qualities come to the fore. Phantom commuters appear on platforms. Cold drafts sweep through sealed corridors, and lights flicker without explanation. Every subtle movement, every shadow, and every echo feels purposeful, as if the tunnel itself is replaying fragments of its history for those who remain. For those attentive to its rhythms, the Red Line tunnel is not merely a passage for transit. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving the echoes of past commuters, workers, and visitors long after the last train has passed. The Red Line tunnel in North Hollywood serves as a reminder that even functional, everyday spaces can hold the weight of time and human activity. Every shadow, every flicker, and every unexplained chill is a trace of those who once moved through the tunnel, a lingering presence that continues to inhabit the underground corridors. In the quiet hours, when platforms are deserted and the trains have ceased running, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, echoing, and replaying the footsteps of the past for anyone perceptive enough to notice. The Purple Line tunnel beneath Koreatown is one of Los Angeles' busiest transit corridors by day, its tunnels carrying the steady rhythm of trains and the constant movement of passengers. Yet after the last trains depart and the stations fall silent, the tunnel reveals a far more mysterious character. Locals, transit staff, and night shift workers report shadowy figures walking through walls, strange metallic noises echoing in abandoned tunnels, and faint whispers repeating old announcements. Locals, transit staff, and night shift workers report shadowy figures walking through walls, strange metallic noises echoing in abandoned tunnels, and faint whispers repeating old announcements. These unusual occurrences suggest that the Purple Line tunnel is more than a simple passageway. where the past lingers and where traces of history continue to interact with the present in ways both subtle and unsettling. One of the most frequently reported phenomena is the appearance of shadowy figures. Witnesses describe human-like silhouettes moving with purpose, walking along platforms or service corridors, only to pass through walls or disappear into corners where no one should be able to go. A late-night maintenance worker recalled checking a section of the tunnel when he saw a figure pacing near an electrical panel. The shadow moved deliberately, seemingly performing a task, before vanishing into the concrete wall beside him. Others report seeing multiple figures drifting through abandoned areas, their presence fleeting yet undeniable. These ghostly commuters and workers often appear focused, as if continuing the routines of past eras, preserving a memory of activity long after the space has emptied of life. Strange metallic noises are another hallmark of the Purple Line Tunnel. Workers, security staff, and occasional late-night commuters have described hearing sounds that seem to originate from abandoned sections of the tunnel, of clanging metal, the sliding of tools, or faint thuds that suggest unseen movement. One technician reported walking a sealed maintenance corridor when a series of metallic clinks echoed from deep within the tunnel. There were no vehicles, no equipment, and no one present, yet the sounds continued in a rhythmic pattern, fading only after several minutes. These noises often coincide with sightings of shadowy figures or other anomalies, reinforcing the sense that the tunnel is alive with residual energy, replaying fragments of work and activity from decades past. Faint whispers are among the most unsettling aspects of the tunnel. Staff and witnesses describe hearing voices repeating old announcements, names, or instructions long since outdated. One security guard recalled hearing the words of a public announcement echo through a deserted platform. Next train arriving in 5 minutes. Please stand behind the yellow line. When he looked down the platform, no signage, no train, and no person seemed present. Yet the whispering tone persisted for several moments before fading. These auditory phenomena create an impression that the tunnel preserves its past, replaying fragments of human presence and activity for those who are present at night. The architecture of the Purple Line Tunnel amplifies these experiences. Long concrete corridors, narrow service passageways, and reflective surfaces create acoustics that carry sound in unusual ways, causing ordinary noises to resonate like footsteps or the clanging of tools. Flickering lights or the subtle movement of shadows can make the environment feel inhabited, as though figures are present just beyond perception. Even minor vibrations from trains above or distant machinery can be interpreted as movement, heightening the sense of awareness for anyone alone in the tunnels. The combination of shadow, sound, and light creates a surreal environment, where reality and apparition often seem to intersect. Abandoned maintenance areas and unused side tunnels are particularly active locations for reported phenomena. Workers often notice doors that are slightly ajar, equipment shifted, or faint sounds echoing from sections that are sealed and unused. Witnesses frequently describe a sense of being observed, a subtle awareness that something unseen is present, watching, and moving within the tunnel. These occurrences are rarely aggressive, but evoke the impression that the tunnel itself holds a memory of those who once traversed it, preserving fragments of their presence for those sensitive enough to notice. Despite the unnerving nature of these experiences, most witnesses do not report outright fear. Shadowy figures, metallic noises, and whisper announcements are generally interpreted as echoes of the past rather than malevolent forces. Many night shift workers describe a sense of kinship with these presences, recognizing the tunnel as a repository of activity, history, and energy. The apparitions and anomalies seem intent on repeating routines, preserving memory and maintaining awareness within the space. After the last train has passed and the stations in Koreatown fall silent, the Purple Line Tunnel reveals its hidden qualities. Shadowy figures glide through walls, metallic noises resonate in abandoned sections, and faint whispers repeat old announcements. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Purple Line Tunnel is not simply a passage for trainsa, it is a living archive, a space where memory, present, and history continue to converge, preserving the energy of commuters, workers, and visitors long after the last train has departed. The purple-lined tunnel beneath Koreatown serves as a reminder that even the most functional and everyday spaces can carry the weight of time and human activity. Every shadow, every flicker, every metallic echo, and every whispered word is a trace of past lives and energy that continues to inhabit the underground corridors. In the quiet hours, when platforms are empty and lights flicker in the dark, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of those who walked, worked, and traveled there long ago. The Blue Line Tunnel at Pico Station is one of Los Angeles' busiest subterranean corridors, carrying trains and commuters through its dimly lit passageways during the day. By day, the tunnel is alive with the sounds of wheels on rails, the chatter of passengers, and the occasional announcement over the intercom. Yet after the final trains depart and the station's empty, a different, far stranger presence emerges. Travelers and transit workers have reported apparitions standing near the tracks, sudden drops in temperature that chill the air, and phantom trains running along empty rails. These experiences suggest that the Blue Line Tunnel is not merely a transit corridor, but a space where echoes of the past linger, interacting with the present in subtle and unsettling ways. One of the most frequently reported phenomena is the appearance of apparitions along the tracks. Witnesses describe human-shaped figures standing silently near the edge of platforms, often motionless, yet radiating a sense of awareness. A late-night security guard recalled patrolling the tunnel when he noticed a figure dressed in faded clothing, standing just beyond the yellow safety line. The silhouette seemed to watch him, and when he approached, it simply disappeared into the shadows, leaving no trace behind. Other travelers have described seeing multiple figures pacing near the tracks, occasionally stepping back into walls or fading as lights flicker. These ghostly presences often appear focused, as though they are maintaining routines long after the station is emptied, replaying the motions of commuters from the past. Sudden drops in temperature are another hallmark of the tunnel-esque haunting. Commuters and maintenance staff alike have described feeling icy drafts sweep through the corridor without warning. These chills are often localized, appearing in specific stretches of the tunnel, and seem to accompany the appearance of apparitions. One late-night technician recounted walking along the tracks when a sudden cold wave enveloped him, leaving him shivering despite the warm air in the station above. The temperature would return to normal moments later, yet the sensation of being watched or followed lingered. For many, these cold spots are a tangible reminder that the tunnel is inhabited by something unseen, a presence that exists alongside the living, but in a different dimension of perception. Phantom trains are another phenomenon reported by those in the tunnel after hours. Travelers and workers have described hearing the distinct roar and vibration of an approaching train on empty tracks, the rhythmic clatter of wheels echoing through the tunnel, and even the hiss of brakes as the train supposedly slows at the platform. In one instance, a late-night worker heard the familiar sounds of a train arriving, only to find that no train was scheduled and none appeared when he looked down the tracks. These auditory illusions are often accompanied by subtle visual anomalies, such as flickering lights or shifting shadows, creating the impression that the tunnel is replaying the presence of trains and passengers long gone. The phantom trains feel tangible and real, enhancing the eerie atmosphere of the empty corridor. The tunnel-esque architecture contributes to these strange experiences. Long concrete walls, low ceilings, and reflective surfaces allow sound to carry unusually far, turning minor noises into echoes that mimic movement. Shadows are stretched and distorted under dim lighting, giving the impression of figures moving where none exist. Even the vibration from distant trains or the hum of electrical systems can mimic the approach of phantom trains or footsteps. The combination of sound, light, and shadow creates an environment where reality and apparition blend, leaving witnesses uncertain of what is real and what is spectral. Abandoned maintenance corridors and side tunnels are particularly active locations for reported phenomena. Doors sometimes swing open on their own, tools appear slightly displaced, and faint sounds echo from areas that should be silent, leaving witnesses uncertain of what is real and what is spectral. Workers have reported glimpsing shadowy figures moving through service tunnels, disappearing into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be reached. These subtle signs suggest that the Blue Line Tunnel preserves traces of activity and presence from past workers and travelers, replaying fragments of routine and motion for those present after hours. Despite the unnerving nature of these occurrences, most witnesses do not report fear. Apparitions, cold spots, and phantom trains are generally interpreted as echoes of history rather than threats. Many late-night workers describe a sense of connection with these presences, feeling that they are sharing space with commuters and employees from decades past. The tunnel seems to hold memory, replaying its own history quietly, deliberately, and persistently for those who are sensitive to its rhythms. When the city above Pico Station is quiet and the tracks lie empty, the Blue Line Tunnel reveals its hidden qualities. Ghostly figures appear near the tracks, icy drafts sweep through the corridors, and the sounds of phantom trains fill the air. Every flicker of light, every echo, and every subtle movement feels purposeful, as though the tunnel itself is replaying fragments of its past for anyone present. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Blue Line Tunnel is not simply a means of transportation. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving the traces of those who traveled, worked, and waited there, long after the trains have ceased to run. The Blue Line Tunnel at Pico Station serves as a reminder that even the most functional spaces can carry the weight of time. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every cold draft, and every phantom sound is a trace of past lives, lingering quietly in the corridors and platforms. In the silent hours, when trains are absent and stations are empty, the tunnel becomes a living witness, observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of the past for anyone perceptive enough to notice. The Red Line Tunnel beneath Pershing Square in downtown Los Angeles is a lifeline of the City's subway system, carrying thousands of commuters daily along its underground routes. By day, the tunnel is filled with a familiar rhythm of trains, the murmur of passengers, and the hum of electric motors. Yet after the final trains have departed and the stations grow silent, the Pershing Square section of the Red Line Tunnel takes on an entirely different character. Witnesses report shadowy figures climbing stairwells, flickering lights that reveal ghostly forms, and whispers that eerily mimic old train signals. These experiences suggest that the tunnel is not merely a common for transit, but a repository of echoes, memories, and lingering presence that quietly coexist with the living. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Late-night maintenance workers, security personnel, and occasional late-shift commuters describe seeing silhouettes ascending stairwells or pacing along corridors where no one should be present. One night, a security guard reported walking through the tunnel when he noticed a dark figure slowly climbing a staircase that led to a sealed exit. The silhouette moved deliberately, pausing occasionally as though checking its surroundings, before vanishing entirely when approached. Others recount glimpses of figures standing near platforms, sometimes partially illuminated by the dim glow of overhead lights, only to disappear when looked at directly. These apparitions often seem purposeful, replaying emotions of past commuters or staff in a continuous, ghostly routine. Flickering lights contribute significantly to the tunnel's unsettling atmosphere. Overhead fluorescents and signal bulbs occasionally pulse, dim, or swing without any discernible electrical cause, casting moving shadows that sometimes resemble human forms. One maintenance worker recounted inspecting a control panel when the lights flickered, briefly revealing a figure standing at the edge of the platform. When illumination stabilized, the figure had vanished entirely, leaving only the echo of distant footsteps. Such anomalies give the impression that the tunnel itself is alive, capable of revealing hidden forms and moments of electrical disturbance, reinforcing the sense that the past and present intersect in this underground corridor. Whispers that mimic old train signals are another feature of the tunnel's nighttime activity. Late shift workers and inspectors often report hearing faint auditory cues resembling the rhythmic tones of warning bells, signal chimes, or the clatter of tracks, even when no trains are running. One technician recalled hearing a series of high-pitched chimes and low rumbles echoing through an empty platform, mirroring a train arrival signal from decades past. When he checked the tracks, there was nothing visible, yet the auditory experience was unmistakably real. These subtle sounds create the impression that the tunnel retains a memory of its operational past, replaying fragments of activity and communication to those who remain after hours. The tunnel's architecture amplifies these spectral experiences. Long concrete corridors, narrow stairwells, and reflective surfaces allow sound and light to carry in unexpected ways, making ordinary noises seem like footsteps or faint echoes of trains. Shadows cast by flickering lights can stretch across walls and staircases, giving the impression of movement where none exists. Even minor vibrations from distant trains or electrical equipment above ground can mimic the motion of phantom figures. The combination of flickering light, elongated shadows, and echoing sound creates an environment where the line between reality and apparition is blurred, making the tunnel feel inhabited even when completely empty. Maintenance corridors, stairwells, and unused side passageways are particularly active areas for these phenomena. Tools and equipment occasionally appear displaced, doors swing slightly ajar without cause, and faint sounds seem to emanate from areas long sealed. Workers report sudden sensations of being observed or followed, despite being alone in the tunnel. These subtle signs suggest that the Pershing Square section preserves traces of human activity, as if the tunnel itself remembers the routines, habits, and presence of those who pass through it, replaying them in ghostly repetition for those present at night. Despite the eerie nature of these occurrences, witnesses rarely report outright fear. Shadowy figures, flickering lights, and ghostly whispers are generally perceived as echoes of the past rather than malevolent forces. Many late-night employees describe a sense of kinship with these presences, feeling as though they are sharing space with commuters, maintenance staff, and others from decades past. The tunnel seems to replay its history quietly, deliberately, and persistently, allowing a subtle dialogue between the past and present. When the city above Pershing Square sleeps and the Red Line tunnel is deserted, its mysterious qualities become most apparent. Shadowy figures climb stairwells, flickering lights reveal fleeting forms, and whispers echo through empty corridors, mimicking the rhythm of long-forgotten train signals. Every subtle movement, every echo, and every flicker seems deliberate, as if the tunnel itself is replaying fragments of its past for anyone who is attentive. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Pershing Square section of the Red Line tunnel is more than a transit corridor. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving the activity and essence of the people who traversed it long after the trains have stopped running. The Red Line tunnel at Pershing Square stands as a reminder that even functional, everyday spaces can carry the weight of time and human presence. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every faint whisper, and every echo is a trace of those who once moved through the tunnels, lingering quietly in concrete and steel. In the silent hours, when platforms are empty and stairwells deserted, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of the past for anyone perceptive enough to notice. The Expo Line tunnel beneath Santa Monica is a vital artery connecting the bustling neighborhoods of Los Angeles, carrying trains and commuters along its underground path during the day. By day, the tunnel hums with life. The rhythmic clatter of train wheels, the chatter of passengers, and the low rumble of electric motors. Yet after the last trains depart and the stations fall silent, the tunnel reveals a far stranger side. Commuters and maintenance workers have reported apparitions walking through walls, flickering lights that suddenly go out, and icy cold spots near abandoned sections of the tunnel. These eerie experiences suggest that the Expo Line tunnel is not merely a functional passageway. It is a space where echoes of the past linger, subtly interacting with those who traverse it after dark. Among the most frequently reported phenomena are the ghostly apparitions. Witnesses describe seeing human-shaped figures moving with purpose along the platforms or service corridors, only to pass through walls or disappear into corners where no one should be. One night, a maintenance worker recalled walking a section of the tunnel to inspect lighting when he saw a dark silhouette standing near a sealed exit. The figure appeared absorbed in its own task, completely unaware of his presence, before fading entirely into the concrete. Other commuters have reported seeing multiple figures pacing near the tracks, their movements deliberate and calm, almost as if they are replaying routines from another era. These ghostly forms seem to preserve the energy of past travelers and workers, replaying fragments of life in the tunnel long after it is emptied. Flickering and extinguishing lights are another hallmark of the Santa Monica Tunnel. Fluorescent bulbs and overhead lamps sometimes pulse or go dark entirely, even when electrical systems are functioning normally. These light anomalies often coincide with sightings of apparitions or other strange phenomena, briefly illuminating shadows that vanish when the lights return. One security guard recounted inspecting a maintenance alcove when the overhead lights flickered, revealing a figure standing near the tracks. When the light stabilized, the figure had vanished entirely, leaving only the faint echo of footsteps in its wake. These unexplained lighting changes enhance the tunnel's eerie atmosphere, creating an environment where ordinary perception is challenged and the past feels suddenly present. Cold spots in the tunnel are another recurring phenomenon. Certain areas, particularly near abandoned maintenance rooms or sealed corridors, suddenly drop in temperature, sending shivers down the spines of workers and late-night travelers. One technician described walking along a corridor when a wave of icy air swept over him, despite the warm ambient conditions elsewhere. These sudden chills often accompany sightings of shadowy figures or flickering lights, reinforcing the sense that the tunnel is alive with unseen presences. Many who experience these cold spots describe a strange mixture of awe and unease, a sensation that the tunnel itself is watching or acknowledging their presence. The architecture of the Expo Line Tunnel contributes significantly to these experiences. Long concrete corridors, reflective surfaces, and low ceilings create acoustics that carry sound and shadows in unpredictable ways. A minor vibration, a dripping pipe, or the hum of distant trains can echo like footsteps, enhancing perception of movement where none exists. Flickering lights cast shadows that stretch across walls and stairwells, sometimes forming humanoid shapes that vanish when approached. This combination of sound, light, and shadow creates an environment where reality and apparition intertwine, making even familiar spaces feel uncanny and unpredictable. Abandoned sections of the tunnel are particularly active areas for reported phenomena. Tools left in place sometimes appear slightly moved, doors swing open or close without explanation. Faint metallic sounds echo from spaces long sealed. Workers report fleeting glimpses of figures moving through maintenance corridors, disappearing into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be reached. These subtle signs suggest that the tunnel preserves the activity and presence of past workers and commuters, replaying fragments of routine and energy for those present after hours. The tunnel seems to hold memory in its concrete and steel. Despite the unnerving nature of these occurrences, most witnesses describe them as more fascinating than frightening. Apparitions, flickering lights, and cold drafts are generally perceived as echoes of history rather than threatening forces. Many night shift workers describe a sense of kinship with these phenomena, recognizing the tunnel as a living archive of human activity and presence. The apparitions and anomalies seem to perform the routines of the past deliberately, allowing a subtle dialogue between those who walk the tunnel today and those who once traveled its corridors decades ago. When the city above Santa Monica grows quiet and the Expo Line Tunnel is empty, its hidden qualities come to fore. Apparitions glide through walls, lights flicker and extinguish, and cold drafts sweep through abandoned corridors. Every shadow, every echo, and every subtle movement feels purposeful, as if the tunnel is replaying fragments of its history for anyone willing to notice. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Expo Line Tunnel is more than a passageway for trains. It is a living archive, a space where memory, present, and energy converge, preserving the traces of commuters, workers, and travelers long after the last train has passed. The Expo Line Tunnel beneath Santa. Monica serves as a reminder that even ordinary, functional spaces can carry the weight of history. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every cold spot, and every unexplained sound is a trace of past activity, lingering quietly in concrete and steel. In the quiet hours, when platforms are deserted and trains are absent, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of the past for anyone perceptive enough to notice. The Gold Line tunnel beneath Little Tokyo is one of Los Angeles' oldest and most traveled subway corridors, connecting commuters from the bustling heart of downtown to the surrounding neighborhoods. By day, it is alive with a familiar rhythm of trains, the chatter of passengers, and the hum of electric motors. Yet, when the last train departs and the stations fall silent, the tunnel reveals a far stranger character. Employees and late-night maintenance workers have reported phantom footsteps echoing through empty corridors, shadowy figures appearing and vanishing, and voices calling out for help. These experiences suggest that the Gold Line tunnel is more than a passageway. It is a repository of memory, presence, and echoes that linger long after the rush of daily life has passed. Phantom footsteps are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Workers and employees often describe hearing the distinct sound of someone walking just beyond the reach of their vision, the echoes bouncing off the concrete walls in perfect rhythm. One night, a security guard patrolling the tunnels recounted hearing a series of measured steps following him down a narrow corridor. Each step was deliberate and steady, yet when he stopped and turned, the hallway was completely empty. Others have reported the footsteps originating from side tunnels or abandoned maintenance areas, echoing as if someone is performing a nightly inspection long after all human activity has ceased. The sound of these invisible footsteps often evokes a sense of presence, as though the tunnel itself is alive with the memories of those who once traveled or worked within it. Shadowy figures are another recurring phenomenon. Witnesses describe seeing humanoid silhouettes move across platforms, maintenance corridors, or stairwells, only to vanish suddenly when approached. One employee recounted walking through a service passage when a dark figure emerged at the far end, pausing as if considering its path before dissolving into the shadows. These figures are often described as partially transparent or blurred at the edges, giving the impression that they exist between dimensions. They rarely appear threatening, yet their sudden appearances and disappearances contribute to a constant sense of unease, reinforcing the notion that the tunnel preserves fragments of its past inhabitants of routines and movements. Voices calling out for help are among the most unsettling experiences reported in the Gold Line tunnel. Late-night workers have heard faint cries echoing through empty corridors, whispers of distress that seem to drift from the walls themselves. One technician recalled hearing a muffled voice calling his name, followed by a plea for help from an unseen presence. When he searched the corridor, there was no one to be found. Yet the voice persisted long enough to create a chilling impression of someone trapped or attempting to communicate from another plane. Others have reported hearing multiple voices of some urgent, some mournful repeating phrases like "a help me" or "a please don't leave me here," often in areas that have long been abandoned. These auditory phenomena create a sense that the tunnel is inhabited by echoes of unresolved presence, lingering energy that continues to interact with the living. Long concrete corridors, low ceiling, and reflective walls carry sound and shadows in unusual ways, turning ordinary noises into eerie echoes. Flickering lights further distort perception, revealing ghostly forms or exaggerating shadows that appear to move independently. Minor vibrations from distant trains, dripping pipes, or the hum of electrical systems can sound like footsteps or voices, blurring the line between reality and apparition. These combined effects create an environment in which the senses are constantly challenged, heightening awareness and amplifying the feeling that the tunnel itself is aware and responsive. Abandoned maintenance areas, stairwells, and unused platforms are particularly active zones for these occurrences. Doors often appear slightly ajar. Equipment seems to have shifted on its own, and faint metallic sounds echo through corridors that have been sealed for years. Employees report fleeting glimpses of shadowy forms moving through these areas, vanishing into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be approached. These subtle signs suggest that the Gold Line tunnel retains traces of human activity. replaying fragments of past routines and interactions for those present during the quiet hours. The tunnel seems to preserve memory in its structure, as if concrete and steel have absorbed the echoes of those who worked and traveled through it, replaying them for the observant or sensitive. Despite the unsettling nature of these phenomena, witnesses rarely report outright fear. The apparitions' footsteps and voices are often interpreted as echoes of history rather than malevolent forces. Many employees and maintenance workers describe a sense of connection to these presences, feeling that the tunnel quietly preserves and honors the people who came before. The experience has become moments of reflection, a subtle awareness that the passageways of Little Tokyo's Gold Line Tunnel are layered with memory and energy that transcend time. When the city above Little Tokyo is still and the stations lie empty, the Gold Line Tunnel reveals its hidden qualities. Phantom footsteps echo through deserted corridors. Shadowy figures glide along platforms, and faint voices call out for help from areas long abandoned. Every flicker of light, every subtle movement, and every echo feels deliberate, as if the tunnel itself is replaying fragments of its history. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Gold Line Tunnel is more than a conduit for transit. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving traces of commuters, workers, and visitors. Long after the trains have stopped running, the Gold Line Tunnel in Little Tokyo stands as a reminder that even ordinary, functional spaces can hold the weight of human history. Every shadow, every flicker, every phantom step, and every whispered plea is a trace of the past, lingering quietly in the corridors and walls. In the quiet hours, when platforms are empty and lights flicker dimly in the distance, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of those who passed through long ago. The Red Line Tunnel beneath Hollywood and Highland is one of Los Angeles, a vital artery connecting the heart of the city with surrounding neighborhoods. By day, the tunnel hums with activity, the rhythmic clatter of trains, the chatter of commuters, and the low hum of electrical motors. Yet after the final trains depart, and the stations empty, the tunnel transforms into a realm of shadows and subtle disturbances. Sightings in the Hollywood/Highland section of the Red Line Tunnel include ghostly figures moving along the tracks, faint murmurs emanating from sealed maintenance rooms, and sudden gusts of cold air in otherwise empty corridors. Ghostly figures along the tracks are the most commonly reported sight. Witnesses describe humanoid shapes pacing along platforms or gliding along the rails, often vanishing when approached. These phenomena suggest that the tunnel is more than a simple passageway. It is a space where the echoes of the past linger, interacting with the present in ways both unnerving and inexplicably real. One late-night maintenance worker recalled inspecting a section of the tunnel when he saw a figure standing near the tracks, as if waiting for a train that would never arrive. The apparition remained motionless, perfectly still, before slowly dissolving into the shadows. Commuters who occasionally traverse the tunnel after hours have reported similar sightings, a presence seemingly aware of their passage yet impossible to touch or follow. These apparitions often appear purposeful, performing the motions of long-past commuters or transit workers, replaying routines that continue unnoticed by the living. Faint murmurs in sealed maintenance rooms are another eerie feature of the Hollywood/Highland Tunnel. Staff and employees often report hearing soft conversations, footsteps, or whisper instructions emanating from corridors that have been locked or abandoned for years. One security guard described walking past a maintenance room when he heard indistinct voices, almost like distant chatter or instructions being issued to unseen personnel. When he opened the door to investigate, the room was completely empty, yet the murmurs lingered for a few more moments before fading into silence. These auditory anomalies create the impression that the tunnel preserves traces of its own history, replaying fragments of life and activity that once took place within its walls. Sudden gusts of cold air are another phenomenon reported in the tunnel. Certain sections, particularly near abandoned side corridors and stairwells, are prone to icy drafts that appear without any apparent cause. Workers and late-night visitors alike describe walking through these areas and feeling a sharp chill, as if something or something is passing close by. One technician recounted experiencing a sudden gust that swept through a tunnel, leaving his hair standing and a cold sensation lingering along his spine. These cold spots often coincide with sightings of ghostly figures or the faint murmurs from abandoned rooms, reinforcing the impression that the tunnel is alive with unseen presences. The architecture of the Red Line Tunnel enhances these spectral effects. Long concrete corridors, narrow maintenance passageways, and reflective surfaces carry sound and shadows in unusual ways, transforming minor noises into echoes that resemble footsteps or voices. Flickering lights cast shifting shadows along walls and tracks, sometimes forming humanoid shapes that vanish when approached. Vibrations from distant trains, the hum of electrical systems, or dripping water can create auditory illusions, further blurring the line between reality and apparition. The combination of shadow, sound, and light creates an environment in which ordinary perceptions are challenged, making the tunnel feel inhabited even when completely empty. Abandoned maintenance rooms, side tunnels, and stairwells are especially active areas for these phenomena. Doors that were securely closed sometimes appear slightly ajar, tools and equipment seem to have shifted, and metallic echoes reverberate through corridors that have been sealed for years. Employees report fleeting glimpses of figures moving through these areas, vanishing into walls or shadows before they can be reached. These subtle signs suggest that the Hollywood/Highland section of the tunnel retains the traces of human activity, replaying fragments of past routines for anyone present after hours. The tunnel appears to act as a repository of memory, preserving the energy and presence of commuters and workers. Despite the unsettling nature of these occurrences, witnesses rarely report overt fear. Ghostly figures, cold drafts, and faint murmurs are generally perceived as echoes of the past rather than threatening entities. Many employees and late-night workers describe a sense of connection with these presences, viewing the tunnel as a living archive that quietly preserves the lives and routines of those who once moved through it. The apparitions and anomalies perform their subtle rituals repeatedly, allowing a dialogue between the past and the present that is both disquieting and mesmerizing. When the city above Hollywood and Highland sleeps and the Red Line Tunnel is empty, its mysterious qualities come to fore. Ghostly figures glide along the tracks, faint murmurs echo from sealed maintenance rooms, and sudden gusts of cold air sweep through corridors. Every shadow, every whisper, every flicker of light feels purposeful, as if the tunnel itself is replaying fragments of its history for anyone present. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Hollywood/Highland section of the Red Line Tunnel is more than a simple transit corridor. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving the echoes of commuters, workers, and visitors long after the last train has passed. The Red Line Tunnel at Hollywood/Highland stands as a reminder that even ordinary, functional spaces can carry the weight of human presence. Every shadow, every gust of cold air, every faint whisper, and every unexplained sound is a trace of the past, lingering quietly in concrete and steel. In the silent hours, when platforms are empty and the trains have ceased, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving and replaying the echoes of those who once traveled through it. The Blue Line Tunnel beneath 78th Street/Metro Center in downtown Los Angeles is a vital hub for commuters traveling across the city. A bustling network of underground tracks connecting multiple lines and neighborhoods. By day, the tunnel hums with activity. The rhythmic clatter of train wheels, the chatter of passengers, and the constant buzz of electrical systems. Yet when the final trains depart and the platforms are emptied of travelers, the tunnel takes on a far stranger character. Travelers and late-night maintenance workers report apparitions standing on platforms, lights flickering without any electrical fault, and phantom train noises echoing along empty tracks. These phenomena suggest that the tunnel is more than a functional conduita. It is a repository of memory, energy, and presence, replaying fragments of past activity in the quiet hours. Among the most commonly reported occurrences are the apparitions seen on platforms. Witnesses describe humanoid figures standing silently near the edge of the tracks, often motionless yet unmistakably present. One maintenance worker recalled walking a deserted platform when he saw a shadowy figure facing the opposite tracks. The apparition remained frozen in place for several moments, before fading into the dimly lit tunnel. Other travelers have reported glimpsing multiple figures pacing or shifting positions, their presence fleeting but undeniable. These ghostly forms often seem engaged in routine activities, as if replaying the behavior of commuters or staff from decades past. Their movements are deliberate yet ethereal, vanishing when approached or illuminated by a flashlight. Flickering lights are another hallmark of the tunnel-esque after-hours activity. Overhead fluorescent lamps and signal bulbs sometimes pulse, dim or go out entirely, even though electrical systems are operating normally. These anomalies often coincide with sightings of apparitions or other unusual phenomena, briefly revealing shadows that vanish when the light stabilizes. A late-night security guard recalled inspecting a service corridor when the lights flickered, momentarily revealing a figure standing near the platform edge, only for it to disappear when illumination returned. The irregular lighting creates an atmosphere of uncertainty, heightening perception that the tunnel is inhabited by unseen presences. Phantom train noises are among the most unsettling aspects of the Blue Line tunnel. Travelers and workers report hearing the distant roar of an approaching train, the clatter of wheels on tracks, or the hissing of brakes, even when no trains are scheduled or visible. One technician described walking along an empty corridor when the unmistakable sound of a train approaching reverberated through the tunnel. He peered down the tracks, expecting to see an oncoming car, yet the tunnel remained completely empty. These auditory illusions often occur in conjunction with flickering lights or fleeting apparitions, creating the impression that the tunnel is replaying fragments of its operational past for anyone present after hours. The tunnel-esque architecture amplifies these spectral experiences. Long concrete corridors, reflective walls, and low ceilings allow sound and shadows to travel in unexpected ways, while flickering lights stretch and distort shadows into forms that appear humanoid. Ordinary structural features become active elements in the creation of these ghostly encounters, turning familiar surroundings into a landscape of uncertainty and subtle suspense. Abandoned service corridors and maintenance rooms are particularly active sites for these phenomena. Tools occasionally appear shifted from their usual positions. Doors swing slightly ajar without cause, and faint metallic echoes reverberate through sealed sections of the tunnel. Workers report glimpses of shadowy figures moving through these corridors, disappearing into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be reached. These subtle signs suggest that the tunnel preserves traces of human activity, replaying fragments of past work and commuting routines. For those present during the quietest hours, the space seems to retain memory, preserving the energy and presence of those who once passed through it. Despite the unsettling nature of these occurrences, most witnesses report fascination rather than fear. Apparitions, flickering lights, and phantom train noises are generally interpreted as echoes of history rather than malevolent forces. Many late-night workers describe a sense of connection with these presences, feeling as though they are sharing space with commuters, maintenance personnel, and travelers from the past. The tunnel becomes a bridge between past and present, replaying subtle routines and interactions long after the last train has passed. When the city above 7th Street/Metro Center sleeps and the platforms are empty, the Blue Line tunnel reveals its hidden qualities. Ghostly figures stand on deserted platforms. Lights flicker unpredictably, and phantom train noises echo through the tracks. Every shadow, every faint sound, and every subtle movement feels deliberate, as if the tunnel is replaying fragments of its past for anyone paying attention. For those attuned to its rhythms, the tunnel is more than a transit corridor, it is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving the traces of commuters, workers, and visitors long after the trains have ceased to run. The Blue Line Tunnel at 78th Street/Metro Center is a reminder that even functional, everyday spaces can carry the weight of human presence and history. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every phantom step, and every unexplained sound is a trace of those who traveled, worked, and lived in the tunnels. In the quiet hours, when platforms are empty and the last echoes of train wheels fade, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of the past. For anyone perceptive enough to notice, the Purple Line Tunnel beneath Wilshire and Vermont is a vital artery of Los Angeles' subway system, carrying commuters through its underground corridors during the bustling hours of the day. By day, the tunnel hums with the familiar rhythm of trains, the chatter of passengers, and the low vibration of electric motors reverberating through concrete and steel. Yet after the final trains depart and the stations are emptied, the Wilshire/Vermont section of the Purple Line Tunnel reveals a far stranger presence. Locals and late-night workers have recounted seeing shadowy figures climbing stairs, flickering lights that reveal fleeting silhouettes, and unexplained metallic sounds echoing through the empty corridors. Witnesses describe humanoid silhouettes ascending stairwells or pacing along narrow corridors, their movements deliberate yet ethereal. One security guard recounted walking through the tunnel late at night when he noticed a dark figure slowly climbing the steps leading to a closed exit. The figure paused occasionally, as if listening or observing, before vanishing entirely into the darkness. Commuters and maintenance personnel who traverse the tunnel during off hours have reported similar encounters. Fleeting glimpses of form at the edge of their vision, an apparition pausing mid-step, or a silhouette melting into the shadows. These figures often seem engaged in repetitive routines, as if replaying the movements of workers, commuters, or inspectors from decades past. Flickering lights are another hallmark of the Wilshire/Vermont Tunnel's spectral activity. Fluorescent bulbs and overhead lamps sometimes pulse, dim, or go completely out, even when electrical systems are operating normally. These sudden changes in illumination often coincide with sightings of apparitions or the perception of movement along walls and staircases. One late-night maintenance worker described walking down a corridor when the lights flickered, briefly revealing a figure standing near a platform railing, only for it to disappear when the illumination stabilized. These light anomalies create an environment of uncertainty, amplifying the sense that the tunnel is alive with unseen presences and enhancing the eerie atmosphere of otherwise ordinary corridors. Unexplained metallic sounds are also commonly reported in this section of the tunnel. Workers and locals alike have heard faint clanging, scraping, or tapping echoing through empty tracks and service areas. One technician described hearing what sounded like tools being dropped or metal equipment being moved along the tracks, though nothing was visible and no one was present. These subtle sounds often appear to originate from side tunnels, abandoned stairwells, or sealed maintenance rooms. The architecture of the Purple Line Tunnel contributes to these uncanny phenomena. Long concrete corridors, low ceiling, and reflective surfaces carry sound and shadows in unusual ways, transforming minor vibrations into echoes that can resemble footsteps or movement. Shadows from flickering light stretch and distort across walls and stairwells, forming shapes that appear humanoid before dissolving when approached. Even the subtle hum of electrical systems or distant trains can be misinterpreted as the approach of an unseen presence. Abandoned maintenance rooms, stairwells, and side corridors are particularly active zones for these occurrences. Doors sometimes swing open on their own, tools appear slightly displaced, and faint echoes resonate from areas that should be silent. Workers report glimpsing shadowy forms moving through these corridors, vanishing into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be reached. These subtle signs suggest that the tunnel preserves traces of human activity, replaying fragments of past routines and energy for those present in the quiet hours. It is as if the tunnel itself remembers the movements, tasks, and presence of those who once traversed it, replaying them in ghostly repetition. Despite the unsettling nature of these experiences, witnesses rarely report fear. Shadowy figures, flickering lights, and metallic sound are generally perceived as echoes of history rather than threatening forces. Many late-night employees describe a sense of connection with these presences, feeling that they are sharing space with commuters, workers, and visitors from decades past. The tunnel seems to perform its routines quietly and deliberately, allowing a subtle dialogue between past and present for those willing to pay attention. When the city above Wilshire in Vermont falls quiet and the Purple Line tunnel is empty, its hidden qualities come to life. Shadowy figures climb stairwells. Flickering lights reveal fleeting silhouettes, and unexplained metallic sounds echo along the tracks. Every shadow, every whisper, every subtle movement feels purposeful, as if the tunnel is replaying fragments of its history for anyone present. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Wilshire/Vermont section of the Purple Line tunnel is more than a transit corridor, it is a living archive. A space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving traces of the commuters, workers, and visitors who once passed through it. The Purple Line tunnel at Wilshire in Vermont stands as a reminder that even functional spaces can carry the weight of history and human presence. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every metallic echo, and every fleeting silhouette is a trace of the past, lingering quietly in concrete and steel. In the silent hours, when stairwells are deserted and platforms are empty, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of those who once traversed it. The Red Line tunnel beneath Vermont and Sunset is one of Los Angeles' most traveled subway corridors, carrying commuters from the heart of the city to surrounding neighborhoods. By day, the tunnel is a hive of activity. The rhythmic clatter of train wheels, the chatter of passengers, and the low hum of electricity reverberate through its concrete walls. The rhythmic clatter of train wheels, the chatter of passengers, and the low hum of electricity reverberate through its concrete walls. Yet after the last trains depart and the platforms fall silent, the Vermont/Sunset section of the Red Line tunnel takes on a mysterious character. The mysterious character. Visitors and late-night workers describe sudden cold drafts in closed areas, phantom footsteps echoing behind them, and voices repeating train announcements from decades past. These experiences suggest that the tunnel is more than a passageway. It is a living archive of the people who have passed through it, preserving fragments of activity and presence that continue to interact with the living. Cold drafts are among the most commonly reported phenomena in the Vermont/Sunset tunnel. Certain areas, particularly near closed stairwells, sealed maintenance rooms, and abandoned corridors, suddenly drop in temperature without any apparent cause. Visitors recount walking through these sections and feeling an icy gust sweep over them, often accompanied by a sense of being watched. One maintenance worker described a sudden chill as he moved past a locked utility door, the air turning cold enough to raise goosebumps along his arms. These cold spots often occur alongside other unusual experiences, such as flickering lights or faint noises, creating the impression that unseen presences linger in the tunnel. Phantom footsteps are another frequent occurrence. Late-night workers, security personnel, and occasional explorers report hearing the unmistakable sound of someone walking just behind them. The echoes often seem to follow a precise rhythm, as if a commuter or maintenance worker is pacing the corridor in tandem with their own steps. One visitor recounted pausing mid-tunnel to let the footsteps pass, only to hear them continue long after he had stopped, moving through an area where no one could possibly be. These phantom footsteps are often described as deliberate and measured, suggesting that the tunnel itself may be replaying fragments of activity from its past. Voices repeating train announcements from decades ago are among the most eerie experiences. Visitors and employees report hearing faint, disembodied voices calling out platform numbers, train arrivals, or safety instructions sounds that mimic the routine announcements once broadcast throughout the tunnel. One security guard described walking through an empty section of the platform when he distinctly heard, "A next train to Union Station, arriving in 2 minutes, despite knowing that no train was scheduled. The voice echoed through the corridor and faded into silence, leaving only the faint hum of electrical systems. These auditory phenomena evoke the sense that the tunnel preserves not only physical traces of human activity, but also the sounds and signals that once guided passengers through its confines. Long, narrow corridors, reflective surfaces, and low ceilings carry sound and shadows in unexpected ways, making ordinary noises appear otherworldly. Flickering lights cast elongated shadows along walls and stairwells, sometimes forming shapes that appear human. Vibrations from distant trains, electrical hums, or dripping water echo through corridors, enhancing perception of movement where none exists. The combination of shadow, sound, and temperature changes creates a layered sensory environment that blurs the line between the natural and the supernatural. Workers report glimpsing dark figures moving through these spaces, vanishing into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be approached. These subtle signs suggest that the Vermont/Sunset section of the Red Line Tunnel preserves the traces of human activity, replaying routines and presence long after the corridor is emptied. The tunnel seems to retain memory, replaying the energy and habits of those who once traveled or worked within it. Despite the unnerving nature of these experiences, most witnesses report fascination rather than fear. Cold drafts, phantom footsteps, and disembodied voices are generally interpreted as echoes of the past rather than threatening entities. Many late-night visitors describe a sense of connection with these presences, feeling that they are sharing space with commuters and workers from decades ago. The tunnel becomes a subtle bridge between past and present, replaying rituals and movements that were once ordinary but now appear as ghostly echoes. When the city above Vermont in sunset sleeps and the tunnel lies empty, its hidden qualities emerge. Cold drafts sweep through sealed corridors, phantom footsteps echo behind unsuspecting visitors, and voices call out announcements from years past. Every flicker of light, every sudden chill, and every subtle sound feels deliberate, as if the tunnel itself is preserving its history for those present. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Vermont/Sunset section of the Red Line Tunnel is more than a subway passagier. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving the traces of commuters, workers, and travelers long after the last train has passed. The Red Line Tunnel at Vermont and Sunset stands as a reminder that even functional spaces can carry the weight of human history. Every cold gust, every phantom step, every disembodied voice, and every flickering light is a trace of the past, lingering quietly in concrete and steel. In the silent hours, when platforms are deserted and the trains have ceased, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of those who once traversed it. The Gold Line Tunnel beneath Highland Park is one of Los Angeles' quieter, yet heavily trafficked subway corridors, connecting commuters from the neighborhoods of northeast Los Angeles to the heart of the city. By day, the tunnel is alive with a familiar hum of trains, the chatter of passengers, and the steady rhythm of wheels against steel. But when the final trains depart and the platforms are emptied, the tunnel takes on an entirely different character. Locals, maintenance workers, and occasional late-night travelers report shadowy figures near the tracks, lights swinging as if someone is operating them, and whispers echoing down the long corridors. Witnesses describe dark, humanoid silhouettes standing motionless along the platforms or pacing slowly near the rails, often vanishing when approached. These experiences suggest that the Highland Park section of the Gold Line Tunnel is more than a functional passageway. It is a space where echoes of the past linger, replaying fragments of human activity in ways both subtle and unsettling. One late-night maintenance worker recalled walking a section of the tunnel when he saw a figure standing near the track edge. It did not move or acknowledge his presence, but seemed frozen in the act of waiting for a train that would never arrive. Other travelers have described glimpsing multiple figures, their forms elongated and blurred in the dim lighting, appearing to repeat the routines of long-past commuters or transit workers. The apparitions often seem purposeful, moving as if carrying out tasks that belong to another time. Lights swinging unexpectedly are another hallmark of the Highland Park Tunnel. Overhead lamps and signal lights sometimes sway or flicker, even in areas where no mechanical systems are operating to cause a movement. Witnesses report seeing bulbs gently oscillate as if guided by invisible hands, casting shifting shadows across walls and floors. One security guard described a corridor in which a series of lights began swinging in sequence, briefly illuminating a shadowy figure near the tracks before stabilizing. These movements create the impression of unseen presence, as though someone or something is interacting with the environment in a deliberate yet imperceptible way. The swinging lights enhance the eerie atmosphere, making the familiar tunnel seem alive with hidden activity. Echoing whispers down the long corridors are also a common phenomenon. Employees and visitors alike describe hearing faint voices that drift along platforms and maintenance passageways, sometimes repeating indistinct phrases or calling out names. One commuter, walking to the tunnel after the last train, recalled hearing what sounded like distant conversations, voices overlapping and fading in and out, though no one was visible. These whispers often appear to originate from the farthest reaches of the tunnel or from side corridors long abandoned, creating the impression that the structure itself retains fragments of human presence. The voices, combined with the shadows and moving lights, create an immersive sensory experience, in which the tunnel feels both alive and haunted by memory. The architecture of the Highland Park Gold Line Tunnel contributes to these unsettling phenomena. Long, narrow concrete corridors, reflective surfaces, and low ceilings allow sound and shadow to travel in unpredictable ways. Even minor vibrations, such as the hum of distant trains or the drip of water from pipes, can sound like footsteps or movement. Flickering lights cast shadows that stretch along walls and stairwells, occasionally forming shapes that appear humanoid. These architectural features amplify ordinary sensory input, turning subtle noises and movements into encounters that seem otherworldly. The interplay of light, sound, and shadow makes it difficult to distinguish between natural phenomena and the tunnel's mysterious manifestations. Abandoned stairwells, maintenance rooms, and side corridors are particularly active zones for these experiences. Doors sometimes appear slightly ajar. Tools or equipment seem displaced, and faint metallic echoes resonate from areas that have been sealed for years. Workers report fleeting glimpses of figures moving through these areas, vanishing into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be reached. These subtle signs suggest that the Highland Park Tunnel preserves traces of human activity, replaying routine sounds and movements for those present during quiet hours. The structure itself seems to hold memory, quietly replaying fragments of the past for anyone attentive enough to perceive them. Despite the unnerving nature of these phenomena, most witnesses report fascination rather than fear. Shadowy figures, swinging lights, and whispered voices are generally interpreted as echoes of the past rather than hostile presences. Many late-night maintenance workers describe a sense of connection to these occurrences, feeling that the tunnel allows a subtle dialogue between past and present. The apparitions and anomalies seem to repeat their routines deliberately, preserving fragments of commuter and worker activity that continue long after the last train has departed. When the city above Highland Park grows quiet and the platforms are empty, the Gold Line Tunnel reveals its hidden qualities. The Gold Line Tunnel reveals its hidden qualities. The Gold Line Tunnel reveals its hidden qualities. Shadowy figures linger near tracks, lights swing unpredictably, and whispers drift down the long corridors. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Highland Park section of the Gold Line Tunnel is more than a transit corridor. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving traces of commuters, workers, and visitors long after the trains have ceased running. The Gold Line Tunnel at Highland Park is a reminder that even everyday functional spaces can carry the weight of human presence. Every shadow, every swinging light, every whispered phrase, and every fleeting figure is a trace of the past, lingering quietly in concrete and steel. In the silent hours, when platforms are deserted and tracks lie empty, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving and replaying the echoes of those who passed through long ago. The Blue Line Tunnel beneath Slauson Station is one of Los Angeles' oldest and most heavily traveled subway corridors, a vital connection between South Los Angeles and the heart of the city. By day, the tunnel hums with a familiar rhythm of train wheels, the chatter of commuters, and the low hum of electrical systems reverberating through concrete and steel. Yet after the final trains depart and the platforms are emptied of passengers, the Slauson section of the Blue Line tunnel takes on a far stranger character. Witnesses have reported apparitions appearing in maintenance rooms, strange footsteps echoing along empty tracks, and phantom train noises reverberating through the tunnels when no trains are running. These experiences suggest that the tunnel is more than a functional passageway. It is a space where the echoes of past activity linger, interacting with the present in subtle and unsettling ways. Apparitions appearing in maintenance rooms are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Staff and security personnel recount seeing humanoid silhouettes moving or standing in service areas, often vanishing when approached. One late-night maintenance worker described inspecting an empty equipment room when he saw a shadowy figure standing near a set of lockers. The figure remained still for several moments before dissolving into the darkness, leaving behind an eerie sensation of being watched. Other witnesses have reported similar experiences, ghostly figures appearing in storage areas, pacing slowly, or performing routine tasks that seem to belong to an earlier era of the tunnel's operation, as if the walls themselves preserve their presence. Strange footsteps along empty tracks are another hallmark of the Slauson Tunnel. Workers and visitors frequently report hearing the distinct echo of someone walking along the rails or service platforms, often following their own steps in perfect rhythm. One security guard recounted pausing mid-tunnel as the sound of footsteps approached from behind. When he turned to investigate, the corridor was completely empty, yet the echoes continued for several seconds, fading into the distance. These phantom footsteps are sometimes accompanied by the sensation of presence, a feeling that someone is moving just beyond the edge of perception. They often appear deliberate, as if the tunnel itself is replaying fragments of its history, preserving the routines of past workers and commuters. Phantom train noises are among the most unsettling experiences reported in the Blue Line tunnel. Witnesses describe hearing the distant roar of approaching trains, the metallic screech of wheels against rails, or the hiss of brakes, even when no trains are scheduled to pass. One technician recounted walking through an empty section of track when the unmistakable sound of a train approaching echoed through the tunnel. He looked down the tracks, expecting to see a train, but found only empty rails stretching into darkness. These auditory phenomena often coincide with sightings of apparitions or the perception of footsteps, creating the impression that the tunnel is replaying fragments of past operations in a ghostly performance that only reveals itself during quiet hours. The architecture of the Slauson Tunnel enhances these spectral effects. Long, narrow corridors, concrete walls, and low ceilings allow sound and shadows to travel in unusual ways, turning ordinary noises into echoes that resemble movement or presence. Flickering lights cast shifting shadows that can appear humanoid, while the low hum of electrical systems resonates like distant machinery. Even subtle vibrations from distant trains or dripping water can mimic footsteps, intensifying the sensation that the tunnel is alive with unseen presences. Abandoned maintenance rooms, stairwells, and side corridors are particularly active zones for these phenomena. Doors sometimes appear slightly ajar, tools are found displaced, and faint metallic echoes resonate from areas that have been sealed for years. Workers report glimpses of dark forms moving through these spaces, disappearing into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be approached. These subtle signs suggest that the tunnel preserves traces of human activity, replaying routines and interactions long after the corridors have emptied. The tunnel seems to retain memory, preserving the energy and habits of those who once worked and traveled within it. Despite the unsettling nature of these occurrences, most witnesses report fascination rather than fear. Apparitions, phantom footsteps, and phantom train noises are generally interpreted as echoes of the past rather than hostile forces. Many late-night workers describe a sense of connection with these presences, feeling that they share the space with commuters and employees from decades gone by. The tunnel allows a subtle dialogue between past and present, replaying routines and echoes of human activity that were once ordinary but now appear spectral. When the city above Slauson Station grows quiet and the platforms are empty, the Blue Line tunnel reveals its hidden qualities. Apparitions appear in maintenance rooms, phantom footsteps echo along tracks, and phantom train noises reverberate through the corridors. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Slauson section of the Blue Line Tunnel is more than a transit corridora. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving the traces of commuters, workers, and visitors long after the last train has passed. The Blue Line Tunnel at Slauson Station stands as a reminder that even functional, everyday spaces can carry the weight of human history. Every apparition, every echoing footstep, and every phantom train noise is a trace of the past, lingering quietly in concrete and steel. In the silent hours, when platforms are deserted and tracks lie empty, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of those who once passed through it. The Red Line Tunnel beneath Civic Center and Grand Park is one of Los Angeles, a critical link connecting commuters from the heart of downtown to the surrounding neighborhoods. By day, the tunnel hums with the steady rhythm of trains, the chatter of passengers, and the low vibration of electrical systems coursing through concrete walls. Yet when the platforms are empty and the last trains have departed, the Civic Center/Grand Park section of the Red Line Tunnel transforms into something altogether different. Commuters and maintenance workers report ghostly figures checking doors, flickering lights that reveal fleeting shadows, and cold spots where the air seems to move on its own. Witnesses describe shadowy forms appearing in service corridors or near locked maintenance rooms, moving with deliberate, almost mechanical motions. These strange occurrences suggest that the tunnel is more than a simple transit passagier. It is a space where echoes of the past linger, replaying fragments of human activity in subtle and unnerving ways. One late-night worker recalled walking a deserted corridor when he noticed a dark silhouette standing at a door, as if inspecting it, as though it were part of the tunnel's invisible workforce. Moments later, the apparition vanished, leaving behind only the faint hum of electricity and a lingering sensation of being watched. Other commuters have reported similar sightings, fleeting glimpses of figures at the edge of their vision, pausing to check doors or monitor the tracks, only to dissolve into shadows before they can be approached. Flickering lights enhance the tunnel's mysterious character. Overhead bulbs and signal lights occasionally dim, pulse, or go out entirely, often in areas where the electrical systems are functioning normally. Witnesses report seeing shadows stretch and shift when the lights fluctuate, creating the illusion of movement where none exists. One security guard described a hallway where the lights flickered repeatedly, briefly illuminating a dark figure moving along the platform, before the corridor returned to normal. The interplay of light and shadow amplifies the impression that the tunnel itself is alive, quietly observing those who pass through it. Cold spots are another commonly reported occurrence. Witnesses describe feeling icy drafts that move against them without any apparent source, often accompanied by a subtle sensation of being followed or observed. One commuter recounted passing a side corridor when a wave of cold air swept over him, as if someone or something had passed directly beside him. These cold spots often appear alongside sightings of ghostly figures or flickering lights, reinforcing the impression that the tunnel preserves an unseen energy tied to its past activity. The architecture of the tunnel contributes to these eerie experiences. Long corridors, low ceilings, and reflective surfaces allow sound and shadows to travel in unpredictable ways, turning ordinary noises into ghostly echoes. Vibrations from distant trains, the hum of electrical systems, and the drip of water from pipes can be misinterpreted as footsteps or movement. Flickering lights cast shadows that stretch along walls and stairwells, sometimes forming humanoid shapes that vanish when approached. The combination of shadow, sound, and temperature shifts creates an environment where reality and apparition blur, making the tunnel feel charged with a quiet, unseen life. Abandoned maintenance rooms, side corridors, and stairwells are particularly active zones for these phenomena. Doors sometimes appear slightly ajar. Tools or equipment are found displaced, and faint metallic echoes resonate through spaces that should remain silent. Workers report seeing dark shapes moving through these areas, disappearing. into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be reached. These subtle signs suggest that the Civic Center/Grand Park tunnel retains traces of human activity, replaying routines and movements long after the corridors have emptied. The tunnel appears to act as a repository of memory, preserving the presence and energy of those who once traversed it. Despite the unsettling nature of these occurrences, most witnesses describe fascination rather than fear. Ghostly figures, flickering lights, and cold spots are generally interpreted as echoes of the past rather than threatening forces. Many late-night workers express a sense of connection to these presences, feeling that they share space with commuters, maintenance personnel, and visitors from years gone by. The tunnel seems to allow a dialogue between past and present, replaying fragments of activity that were once routine but now appear as spectral traces. When the city above sleeps and the platforms are empty, the Red Line tunnel reveals its hidden qualities. Ghostly figures check doors, flickering lights reveal fleeting shadows, and cold drafts sweep through corridors with no apparent source. Every shadow, every subtle sound, and every unexplained chill feels deliberate, as if the tunnel is replaying fragments of its history for anyone present. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Civic Center/Grand Park section of the Red Line Tunnel is more than a transit corridor. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving traces of commuters, workers, and visitors long after the last train has departed. The Red Line Tunnel at Civic Center/Grand Park stands as a reminder that even ordinary functional spaces can carry the weight of human presence and history. Every ghostly figure, every flickering light, and every cold gust is a trace of the past, lingering quietly in concrete and steel. In the silent hours, when platforms are deserted and tracks lie empty, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of those who once passed through it. The Expo Line tunnel along the Culver City extension is one of Los Angeles' most important transit corridors, carrying commuters daily through its underground passages. By day, the tunnel is alive with the hum of trains, the chatter of passengers, and the constant vibration of electrical systems running through concrete walls. Yet after the last trains depart and the platforms lie empty, the tunnel transforms into a place of eerie activity. Employees and late-night maintenance workers have reported apparitions walking along the tracks, strange metallic clanging with no discernible source, and voices calling out warnings from the depths of the otherwise empty corridors. These occurrences suggest that the Culver City extension of the Expo Line Tunnel is more than a simple conduit for trains. It is a space where the echoes of past activity linger, interacting with the present in subtle, often unsettling ways. Apparitions walking along the tracks are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Witnesses describe shadowy, humanoid figures pacing or moving along the rails, sometimes pausing to inspect signals or track switches. One security guard recounted checking a section of track late at night when he noticed a dark silhouette moving deliberately along the rail. It appeared to be conducting some unseen task, and when he attempted to approach, it vanished as though dissolving into the shadows. Other employees have reported seeing multiple figures moving in tandem, repeating routines that suggest a connection to workers, inspectors, or commuters from decades past. These ghostly presences are often fleeting, yet their appearance leaves a lingering sense that the tunnel itself is alive with memories of those who once moved within it. Strange metallic clanging is another hallmark of the tunnel's spectral activity. Late-night workers frequently report hearing the sharp, echoing sound of metal striking metal, the noise seeming to come from maintenance rooms, side corridors, or even along the tracks themselves. One technician described walking along an empty section of the tunnel when he heard a series of clanging sounds, as if tools were being dropped or rails were struck. The source could not be identified, and the noises ceased as suddenly as they began. These unexplained metallic echoes often accompany sightings of shadowy figures, reinforcing the sense that the tunnel is replaying fragments of past activity and imbuing the empty corridors with a spectral presence. Voices calling out warnings from empty tunnels are among the most unsettling phenomena. Employees and occasional commuters have reported hearing disembodied voices issuing cautions or instructions, often repeating phrases that sound like safety announcements or emergency warnings. One maintenance worker recalled walking through a side corridor when he heard a clear, authoritative voice call, a "watch the track," "maintenance ahead," a... Despite the clarity and volume of the voice, the tunnel was completely deserted. These auditory occurrences often coincide with other anomalies, such as flickering lights or apparitions on the tracks, creating an immersive and disorienting experience. The voices suggest that the tunnel preserves not just the presence, but also the communication of those who once worked and traveled within it. The architecture of the Culver City extension amplifies these experiences. Long, narrow corridors, low ceilings, and reflective surfaces carry sound and shadows in unusual ways, transforming ordinary noises into echoes that resemble footsteps, movement, or mechanical activity. Flickering lights cast shadows that stretch along walls and tracks, occasionally forming shapes that appear humanoid. Vibrations from distant trains or the hum of electrical systems can be misinterpreted as movement or the approach of a figure. These physical qualities make the tunnel a perfect environment for apparitions, sounds, and sensations that feel deliberate and intelligent, even when no one is present. Abandoned maintenance rooms, stairwells, and side corridors are particularly active areas for these phenomena. Doors are sometimes found slightly ajar, equipment appears to have shifted, and faint metallic echoes resonate from sealed sections of the tunnel. Workers have glimpsed shadowy forms moving through these areas, vanishing into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be approached. These subtle signs suggest that the tunnel preserves traces of human activity, replaying movements, sounds, and routines for those present in the quiet hours. The tunnel appears to retain memory, holding the energy and presence of the people who once navigated it, long after it had been emptied. Despite the eerie nature of these occurrences, most witnesses report fascination rather than fear. Apparitions, clanging sounds, and voices are often interpreted as echoes of the past rather than threats. Many late-night employees describe a sense of connection with these presences, feeling that the tunnel allows a dialogue between past and present. The apparitions seem to repeat their routines deliberately, preserving fragments of human activity that were once ordinary but now appear as spectral traces. When the city above Culver City sleeps and the platforms are deserted, the Expo Line tunnel reveals its hidden qualities. Apparitions walk along tracks. Metallic clanging echoes through empty corridors, and voices call out warnings from shadows. Every shadow, every sound, and every fleeting presence feels deliberate, as if the tunnel itself is preserving its history for anyone present. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Culver City extension of the Expo Line tunnel is more than a transit corridor. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving the traces of commuters, workers, and visitors long after the trains have stopped running. The Expo Line tunnel at the Culver City extension is a reminder that every functional, everyday space can carry the weight of human presence and history. Every apparition, every metallic echo, and every disembodied voice is a trace of the past, lingering quietly in concrete and steel. In the silent hours when tracks lie empty and corridors are deserted, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of those who once passed through it. The Purple Line tunnel beneath Wilshire and Western Avenue is one of Los Angeles' busiest underground corridors, ferrying commuters across the city and linking neighborhoods with the heart of downtown. During daylight hours, the tunnel hums with life. The rhythmic clatter of train wheels, the chatter of passengers, and the low hum of electrical systems coursing through concrete walls. Yet when the last trains depart and the platforms are emptied, this section of the Purple Line transforms into something altogether different. Locals, maintenance workers, and late-night travelers report shadowy figures standing on platforms, flickering lights revealing fleeting silhouettes, and phantom footsteps echoing endlessly along empty corridors. Witnesses describe dark, humanoid silhouettes appearing along the edge of platforms, sometimes still, other times pacing slowly as though waiting for trains that will never arrive. One late-night security guard recalled walking along the platform when he noticed a figure standing near the tracks. It did not move or respond to his presence, yet it radiated a deliberate, watchful energy. Moments later, it vanished entirely, leaving him alone in the dimly lit corridor. Other commuters have reported glimpsing multiple figures, their forms blurred and distorted in the low lighting, as though replaying routines of workers, inspectors, or past travelers from decades ago. These apparitions seem purposeful, repeating tasks or movements that hint at lives once lived within the tunnel. Flickering lights add another layer of eeriness to the tunnel. Overhead lamps and signal lights often pulse or dim without cause, casting shadows that stretch and shift along walls and platforms. Witnesses report seeing shapes that appear humanoid when lights flicker, only to dissolve when illumination stabilizes. One maintenance worker recounted walking down a corridor when the lights swayed in sequence, briefly revealing a figure leaning against a wall before vanishing into darkness. These unpredictable visual shifts heighten the sense of presence, making it difficult to distinguish ordinary shadows from supernatural ones. The combination of shadow and light transforms a familiar architecture into a stage for spectral activity, creating an atmosphere thick with anticipation and unease. Phantom footsteps echoing endlessly are another hallmark of the Wilshire/Western Tunnel. Late-night commuters and workers frequently report hearing the distinct sound of someone walking behind them or along distant corridors, often following a precise rhythm. One guard described pausing mid-tunnel as he heard footsteps approach from a side corridor. When he turned, the passage was empty, yet the echoes persisted, fading slowly into the distance. These phantom footsteps often appear deliberate, as if the tunnel itself is replaying fragments of activity from the past. The repetition of sound, combined with visual anomalies, gives the impression of a corridor alive with unseen presences. The architecture of the tunnel amplifies these phenomena. Long, narrow corridors, low ceilings, and reflective surfaces carry sound and shadows in ways that distort perception. Vibrations from distant trains, electrical hums, and the drip of water from pipes can resemble footsteps or movement, while flickering lights cast elongated shadows that sometimes form humanoid shapes. These physical properties make the tunnel a perfect environment for experiences that feel alive and interactive. Even when the corridor is empty, the interplay of light, sound, and shadow blurs the line between natural occurrences and inexplicable phenomena. Abandoned stairwells, maintenance rooms, and side corridors are particularly active zones for these experiences. Doors are sometimes found slightly ajar, equipment appears to have shifted, and faint metallic echoes resonate from areas sealed for years. Workers report fleeting glimpses of figures moving through these spaces, vanishing into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be approached. These subtle signs suggest that the tunnel preserves traces of human activity, replaying movements, sounds, and routines of those present during quiet hours. The corridor appears to act as a repository of memory, retaining the energy and presence of those who once traveled through it. Despite the unsettling nature of these occurrences, most witnesses report fascination rather than fear. Shadowy figures, flickering lights, and phantom footsteps are generally interpreted as echoes of the past rather than threats. Late-night employees often describe a sense of connection with these presences, feeling that the tunnel allows a dialogue between past and present. Apparitions seem to repeat their routines deliberately, preserving fragments of human activity that were once ordinary but now appear spectral. When the city above Wilshire and Western grows quiet and the platforms are deserted, the purple-lined tunnel reveals its hidden qualities. Shadowy figures stand along platforms, lights flicker revealing fleeting silhouettes, and phantom footsteps echo endlessly down corridors. Every shadow, every movement, and every subtle sound feels deliberate, as if the tunnel itself is preserving fragments of its history for anyone present. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Wilshire/Western section of the Purple Line Tunnel is more than a transit corridor, it is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving the traces of commuters, workers, and visitors, long after the last train has passed. Every shadow, Every flickering light and every echoing footstep is a trace of the past, lingering quietly in concrete and steel. In the silent hours, when platforms are empty and tracks lie abandoned, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of those who once passed through it. The Red Line Tunnel of Hollywood and Vine is one of Los Angeles' most iconic underground transit corridors, carrying thousands of commuters each day through the heart of the city. By daylight, it hums with life. The clatter of train wheels, the chatter of passengers, and the low vibration of electrical systems coursing through concrete walls. The clatter of train wheels, the chatter of passengers, and the low vibration of electrical systems coursing through concrete walls. Yet after the last trains depart and the platforms fall silent, the Hollywood/Vine section of the Red Line Tunnel transforms into a realm of strange and unexplained activity. Witnesses and late-night maintenance workers report seeing ghostly commuters waiting in abandoned sections, feeling sudden cold drafts, and hearing voices repeating long-forgotten announcements. These experiences suggest that this tunnel is more than a functional transit passage. It is a space where echoes of the past linger, replaying fragments of human presence long after the corridors have emptied. Ghostly commuters are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Visitors describe figures standing or sitting along abandoned platform areas, often waiting as though for a train that will never arrive. One late-night security guard recounted walking through a deserted section of the tunnel when he saw a group of dark silhouettes along the edge of the tracks. They remained still, their postures relaxed but deliberate, as if absorbed in the routines of their daily commute. Moments later, the figures vanished entirely, leaving the corridor empty and silent. Other witnesses have reported similar sightings. Shadowy forms moving slowly between stairwells and platforms, disappearing when approached. These apparitions often seem purposeful, repeating actions that suggest they are echoes of commuters from decades past, trapped in the cycle of their daily journeys. Cold drafts are another hallmark of the Hollywood/Vine Tunnel. Certain areas, particularly near abandoned stairwells, maintenance rooms, or sealed sections of the platform, suddenly drop in temperature without any discernible cause. Witnesses describe icy gusts brushing against their skin, sometimes accompanied by the sensation of being followed or watched. One commuter recalled pausing mid-corridor when a sharp cold draft passed directly over him, as if someone had walked beside him. These cold spots often occur in conjunction with sightings of ghostly figures, creating a palpable sense of presence in the tunnel. The shifting temperatures, combined with dim lighting and shadow corners, amplify an eerie atmosphere, making ordinary corridors feel charged with unseen energy. Voices repeating long-forgotten announcements are among the most unsettling phenomena. Late-night maintenance workers and occasional commuters have heard disembodied voices calling out platform numbers, train arrivals, or safety instructions. One guard described walking along a side corridor when he distinctly heard a next train to Union Station, arriving in 2 minutes, even though no train was scheduled. The voice echoed through the tunnel and faded into silence, leaving only the low hum of electrical systems. These auditory phenomena give the impression that the tunnel preserves not just the movement, but also the communication of those who once used it. The echoes of announcements long forgotten serve as reminders that every corridor, platform, and stairwell carries a memory of human activity. The architecture of the tunnel amplifies these experiences. Long, narrow corridors, low ceiling, and reflective surfaces allow sound and shadows to travel in unpredictable ways, turning minor noises into phantom footsteps or whispers. Flickering lights cast elongated shadows along walls and platforms, sometimes forming shapes that appear humanoid. Vibrations from distant trains or the subtle hum of electricity can be misinterpreted as movement, enhancing the sense that the tunnel is alive. The combination of shadow, sound, and temperature shifts makes the corridor feel charged with presence, blurring the line between natural phenomena and the unexplained. Abandoned maintenance rooms, stairwells, and side corridors are particularly active zones for these occurrences. Doors are sometimes found slightly ajar. Equipment appears displaced, and faint metallic echoes resonate from sealed sections. Witnesses report glimpses of dark forms moving through these areas, vanishing into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be approached. These subtle signs suggest that the tunnel preserves traces of human activity, replaying routines and movements for those present during quiet hours. The corridor appears to act as a living archive, retaining the energy and habits of those who once traversed it. Despite the unsettling nature of these phenomena, most witnesses report fascination rather than fear. Ghostly commuters, cold drafts, and disembodied announcements are often interpreted as echoes of the past rather than threatening presences. Many late-night workers describe a sense of connection with these apparitions, feeling that the tunnel allows a dialogue between past and present. The ghostly figures seem to repeat their routines deliberately, preserving fragments of ordinary activity that now appear spectral. When the city above Hollywood and Vine grows quiet, and the platforms are deserted, the Red Line Tunnel reveals its hidden qualities. Ghostly commuters linger in abandoned sections. Cold drafts sweep through corridors with no apparent source. And voices call out announcements long forgotten. Every shadow, every sound, and every fleeting presence feels deliberate, as if the tunnel itself is replaying fragments of its own history for anyone attentive enough to perceive them. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Hollywood/Vine section of the Red Line Tunnel is more than a transit corridor. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving traces of commuters, workers, and visitors long after the last train has passed. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving traces of commuters, workers, and visitors long after the last train has passed. The Red Line Tunnel at Hollywood and Vine stands as a reminder that even ordinary, functional spaces can carry the weight of human presence and history. Every ghostly figure, every cold draft, and every disembodied announcement is a trace of the past, lingering quietly in concrete and steel. In the silent hours when platforms are empty and tracks lie abandoned, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of those who once passed through it. The Gold Line Tunnel beneath Memorial Park is a quiet yet heavily traveled corridor, a vital link connecting commuters from northeast Los Angeles to the heart of the city. By day, it is filled with the familiar sounds of train wheels rolling along steel tracks, announcements over speakers, and the footsteps and chatter of passengers moving between platforms. But when the trains cease their runs and the platforms are empty, the Memorial Park section of the Gold Line Tunnel transforms into a place of mystery and subtle unease. Witnesses report phantom figures near the tracks, lights flickering without explanation, and strange whispers that vanish the moment anyone attempts to approach. These phenomena suggest that the tunnel is more than a simple transit routine. It is a space where echoes of past presence linger, replaying fragments of human activity long after the stations have emptied. Phantom figures near the tracks are among the most frequently reported experiences. Commuters and late-night maintenance workers describe dark, shadowy shapes appearing along the platform edges or near stairwells, sometimes standing perfectly still, sometimes moving slowly as if caught in a rhythm of an unseen routine. One security guard recalled walking along the platform late at night when he noticed a figure pacing near the rails. It did not respond to his presence or the sound of his footsteps, yet it radiated a deliberate, watchful energy, like someone performing a task from long ago. When he turned to follow it, the figure seemed to dissolve into shadows, leaving him alone in the silent tunnel. Other witnesses have reported multiple figures appearing simultaneously, fleeting glimpses of commuters or workers from a bygone era, repeating actions that have long been forgotten. Lights flickering without cause are another hallmark of the tunnel's mysterious nature. Overhead lamps and signal lights often dim, pulse, or sway unpredictably, casting shadows that stretch and shift along walls and platforms. One maintenance worker described walking down a corridor when the lights suddenly flickered in sequence, revealing a dark silhouette leaning against a wall before the corridor returned to normal. These moments of shifting illumination create an unsettling effect, amplifying perception that unseen presences are moving through the space. The interplay of light and shadow transforms ordinary sections of the tunnel into stages for spectral activity, turning the familiar into something unpredictable and eerie. Strange whispers that vanish when approached add another layer to the tunnel's mystique. Late-night workers and occasional travelers report hearing faint murmurs drifting through corridors, voices that seem to call out warnings, fragments of conversation, or even names. One commuter recalled walking through an empty platform when a whisper floated near his ear, uttering the words, "A watch the track A." When he turned to locate the source, the tunnel was entirely empty, and the sound had disappeared as if it had never existed. These auditory phenomena often accompany sightings of figures or flickering lights, creating a sensory experience in which the tunnel feels alive with unseen presences. The whispers give the impression that the tunnel itself is carrying echoes of activity, preserving communication from the past long after the original voices have faded. Long, narrow corridors, low ceilings, and reflective surfaces carry sound and shadows in ways that distort perception. Vibrations from distant trains, the hum of electrical systems, and dripping water can mimic footsteps or movements, while flickering lights cast elongated shadows that sometimes take humanoid forms. These physical properties make the tunnel an environment where ordinary phenomena can be interpreted as ghostly presence, making the tunnel feel charged with unseen energy. Doors sometimes appear slightly ajar, equipment seems displaced, and faint echoes resonate from sealed sections, vanishing into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be reached, replaying routines and movements long after the corridors have emptied. The tunnel appears to act as a living archive, storing the energy and habits of those who once traveled and worked within it. Despite the unsettling nature of these experiences, most witnesses report fascination rather than fear. Phantom figures, flickering lights, and disembodied whispers are often interpreted as echoes of the past rather than threatening presences. Late-night workers describe a sense of connection with the phenomena, feeling that the tunnel allows a dialogue between past and present. The apparitions seem to repeat their routines deliberately, preserving fragments of human activity that were once ordinary but now appear spectral. When the city above Memorial Park grows quiet and the platforms are deserted, phantom figures linger near tracks. Lights flicker unpredictably. Whispers drift through corridors, vanishing when approached. Every shadow, every sound, and every fleeting presence feels deliberate, as if the tunnel itself is replaying fragments of its history for anyone present. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Memorial Park section of the Gold Line Tunnel is more than a transit corridor. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving traces of commuters, workers, and visitors long after the last train has passed. The Gold Line Tunnel at Memorial Park is a reminder that even everyday, functional spaces can carry the weight of human presence and history. Every phantom figure, every flickering light, and every vanishing whisper is a trace of the past, lingering quietly in concrete and steel. In the silent hours, when platforms are empty and tracks lie abandoned, the tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of those who once passed through it. The Blue Line Tunnel at Washington Station is one of Los Angeles' oldest and most traveled underground corridors, carrying commuters to the heart of the city day after day. By daylight, it hums with the familiar rhythms of trains gliding along steel tracks, the chatter of passengers, and the subtle vibration of electrical systems running through concrete walls. Yet when the station closes and the last trains depart, the tunnel transforms into a place of quiet unease, a realm where unexplained phenomena seem to take hold. Travelers and late-night maintenance workers recount shadowy forms moving along the tracks, flickering lights revealing ghostly figures, and disembodied voices calling out warnings from unseen sources. These experiences suggest that the Washington Station section of the Blue Line Tunnel is more than a functional transit route. It is a space where remnants of past activity linger, replaying themselves in ways that are subtle, eerie, and unforgettable. One late-night security guard recalled walking along a deserted platform, when he noticed a dark figure walking slowly near the edge of the tracks. The figure seemed entirely absorbed in its task, unaware of the presence of the living. When he moved to follow it, the shadow vanished, leaving only the faint hum of electrical systems behind. Other commuters have reported fleeting glimpses of multiple figures, blurred and indistinct, moving through the tracks or along side corridors, as if replaying routines of maintenance workers, inspectors, or passengers from decades past. These apparitions often appear purposeful, performing tasks that seem familiar yet impossibly out of time. Overhead lamps and signal lights occasionally dim, pulse, or sway unpredictably, casting shifting shadows along walls and tracks. One maintenance worker described walking down a side corridor when the lights flickered in sequence, revealing a dark figure leaning against a railing before the shadows returned to normal. These sudden visual anomalies make the ordinary architecture of the tunnel feel unpredictable and alive. The interplay of light and shadow transforms familiar passageways into stages for spectral activity, heightening the sense that the tunnel itself is observing those who pass through it. Voices calling out warnings from unseen sources add another layer of unease. Employees and travelers often hear disembodied voices issuing cautions or instructions, as though the tunnel is still inhabited by commuters and workers long gone. One guard recalled walking through a deserted stairwell. When a clear voice called, "Watch the platform," the words echoed through the corridor, but no one was there. These auditory phenomena often accompany sightings of shadowy forms or flickering lights, creating a fully immersive experience in which the tunnel seems alive with unseen presences. The voices suggest that the corridor preserves communication from the past, keeping the memory of its users alive in subtle, unsettling ways. The architecture of the Washington Station tunnel amplifies these experiences. Long, narrow corridors, reflective surfaces, and low ceilings allow sound and shadows to travel unpredictably, making minor noises resemble phantom footsteps or movement. Vibrations from distant trains, the hum of electrical systems, and dripping water can be interpreted as signs of presence. Flickering lights cast elongated shadows along walls and tracks, sometimes forming human-like shapes that disappear when approached. These physical qualities create an environment in which ordinary elements are transformed into evidence of unseen activity, blurring the line between natural phenomena and the inexplicable. Abandoned maintenance rooms, stairwells, and side corridors are particularly active areas for these phenomena. Doors sometimes appear ajar, equipment seems displaced, and faint metallic echoes resonate from sealed sections of the tunnel. Workers report glimpses of dark shapes moving through these areas, vanishing into walls or ventilation shafts before they can be reached. These subtle signs suggest that the tunnel preserves traces of human activity, replaying routines and movements long after the corridors have emptied. Despite the unsettling nature of these occurrences, most witnesses report fascination rather than fear. Shadowy forms, flickering lights, and disembodied voices are often interpreted as echoes of the past rather than threatening entities. Late-night employees frequently describe a sense of connection with these phenomena, feeling that the tunnel allows for a dialogue between past and present. Apparitions seem to repeat their routines deliberately, preserving fragments of ordinary activity that now appear spectral and haunting. When the city above Washington Station grows quiet and the platforms are deserted, the Blue Line tunnel reveals its hidden qualities. Shadowy forms move along tracks, lights flicker to reveal fleeting figures, and voices call out warnings from unseen sources. Every shadow, every sound, and every fleeting presence feels deliberate, as if the tunnel itself is preserving fragments of its own history for those who are attentive enough to notice. For those attuned to its rhythms, the Washington Station section of the Blue Line Tunnel is more than a transit corridor. It is a living archive, a space where memory, energy, and presence converge, preserving traces of commuters, workers, and visitors long after the trains have stopped running. The Blue Line Tunnel at Washington Station stands as a reminder that even functional, everyday spaces can carry the weight of human presence and history. Every shadow, every flickering light, and every disembodied voice is a trace of the past, lingering quietly in concrete and steel. In the silent hours, when platforms lie empty and tracks are abandoned. The tunnel becomes a living witness, silently observing, moving, and replaying the echoes of those who once passed through it. Los Angeles thrives above ground with its glitz and bustle, but beneath the city lies a network of tunnels, filled with unseen watchers